subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
Hello everyone and welcome to this course on OneNote for Microsoft 365. My name's Deb and I'm a Microsoft IT trainer and your excitable host for this course. And the reason why I'm so excited is because I love OneNote and I can't wait to show you some of the awesome features available in this digital note-taking application, which is really going to make you rethink how you go about the simple task of taking notes. Over the balance of this course, I'm going to show you how to get started with OneNote, how to gather information from different sources, how to insert different types of media files, how to organize that information logically so it's easier to read and find, and I'm going to show you how you can collaborate with others on team notebooks. Now this is a very comprehensive course and it offers a complete guide to all of the features available in the latest version of OneNote. So if that's what you're looking for, then you've come to the right place. Now this course is divided down into 13 sections and I've tried to arrange these logically to correspond with the natural flow of how you would work in OneNote. Now I'm going to be making some assumptions before we begin this course. I'm going to assume that you have some familiarity with Microsoft applications, so maybe you are a Word or an Excel or a PowerPoint user prior to coming to OneNote. And what I mean by this is that I won't be going through the basics of how Microsoft applications work per se. I am going to assume that you are reasonably familiar with the ribbon layout and the standard user interface that's common amongst all Microsoft applications. Now when it comes to the scope of this course, I'm going to be working in the OneNote for Microsoft 365 desktop application. I'll be providing information on things like the mobile app and the online version, but it will be a high-level overview, as opposed to a full training course in those specific parts. Now, if you're feeling a bit confused by what I've just said there, don't worry at all. In the next module, we're going to start by running through the different versions of OneNote that are available, because as with all things in Microsoft, there are quite a few options. But for now, that is all. I just want to say thank you so much for choosing this course. I can't wait to dive into it with you. So with that said, grab yourself a coffee and let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. Now I just thought I'd start out this section by running you through the different versions of OneNote that are available, because in my experience this is one of those things that causes a lot of confusion. In fact, very recently I was running a webinar on OneNote and we got about halfway through and I had many of the participants say to me, "What you're looking at on the screen looks nothing like what I'm looking at on my screen." And we determined that we were actually using different versions of OneNote. So this is something you really have to watch out for. So I'm going to run you through the different versions available and also let you know the version that I'm going to be using throughout the balance of this course. If you are a Windows 10 user, what you might find is that you have access to the Windows version of OneNote, because OneNote now comes packaged with Windows 10. So if you've downloaded that onto your PC, or maybe you've bought a new laptop that has it already installed, you'll find that you will have a version of OneNote 2016 already installed and ready to go on your PC. So I'm using a Windows 10 laptop and this is a fairly new laptop, so I have this version installed. So I'm going to jump down to my search bar at the bottom and I'm going to start to type in OneNote. Now I want you to ignore the OneNote app which is showing underneath Best Match for the moment, because that's something different to the one underneath, which is OneNote for Windows 10. This is the one that comes installed with Windows 10 and it looks completely different to the OneNote desktop version and also the online version. So if I very quickly open OneNote for Windows 10, you'll see that it looks like this. So if when you open up your version of OneNote, it looks very similar to something that I have here, then you're more than likely using the Windows 10 version. And a really quick and easy way to check that is that in the title bar at the top, it will say OneNote for Windows 10. So this is one of the versions. Now, this isn't the version that I'm going to be using throughout this course. And the reason why is that it doesn't have quite as many features as the full desktop version. However, because a lot of people do have this on their PC for free without having to have any kind of 365 subscription, at the end of each section of this course, I am going to provide a module which basically runs through everything we've been through in the section, but in the Windows 10 version as well. So if you do have this version, you should still be able to follow along nicely. So that's the first version of Windows 10 that you may or may not have available, depending on what operating system you're using. Now, the second way that you can access OneNote is through a Microsoft 365 subscription. And you can see here that I'm currently logged in to my online 365 portal. And if you're a bit confused by Microsoft 365, it's just the new name for Office 365. So if you have a subscription to Microsoft 365, then you should have access to OneNote. So if I click the little waffle or the app launcher at the top here, you can see that one of the applications I have access to is OneNote. I can click it and it's going to jump me into the online version of OneNote. And again, this looks very different to the Windows version and also the full desktop version that we're going to open shortly. Now, if you're fairly used to using Microsoft 365, you'll know that this kind of online browser, online portal, is where you can come to access the light versions of the applications. So they're intended for you to be able to update, read things, work on the go on whatever device you're using. As long as you've got an internet connection, you can jump into your Office 365 account and access online versions. But these aren't the full versions. And because of that, this also isn't the version that we're going to be covering in this particular course. Now, I'm going to click on Home for the time being, because when you do have a Microsoft 365 subscription, when you log into the portal, you're able to download and install the full versions of all of these applications. And you do that via this button just here, Install Office. And by clicking that and running through the setup process, you're then going to have the full versions of all of the applications available on your desktop. So that's exactly what I've done. And once you've done that, you'll then be able to search for OneNote. It's actually this one here. So not the one with 4 Windows 10 after it. This is the full desktop version. So you can click here to launch it, or you can do what I've done and pin it to your taskbar. And you'll see mine is located down here with the rest of my Microsoft applications. So I can click to open it up, and this is the feature-rich desktop version. And it's this one that I'm going to be using throughout the balance of this course. So what I'm trying to say to you here is if you predominantly work in the online version, then this isn't a training course that's going to cover that. However, if you do have the desktop version, and also if you have that free version through Windows 10, then this course is going to be perfect for you. Just bear in mind there will only be one module per section that relates to the Windows 10 version, as we're mostly going to be working in the desktop version. Phew, quite a lot to take in there. As always, Microsoft likes to make things a little bit confusing for everybody. And just a final point to note, there is a mobile app that you can download for Windows Phone, Android and iOS. And I will be doing a brief overview on the iOS app at the end of this course. So hopefully that is reasonably clear to everybody and we're all on the same page with regards to the version we're going to be using and what we're going to be covering in this course. I'm going to jump across to the next module where we're going to start to explore some of the keyboard shortcuts in OneNote. So I'm going to go across there now and I hope to see you there. Now in this first module, we're going to talk about keyboard shortcuts. And it wouldn't be one of my courses if I didn't start out with this module. Because keyboard shortcuts are such an important thing when it comes to being able to work efficiently, not just in OneNote, but any Microsoft application. Now, if you're coming to OneNote having used Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or even Outlook, then you've got a bit of a head start here because many of the keyboard shortcuts are exactly the same in OneNote as they are in those other applications, at least the ones that you'll use most frequently. Now, if all things Microsoft are completely new to you and you're not entirely sure what I mean by a keyboard shortcut is essentially a combination of keystrokes that will execute a task. And a lot of the time, using a keyboard shortcut is a lot quicker than using your mouse to hunt through the different ribbons to find the task that you need. And there are so many different keyboard shortcuts in OneNote that you would never be expected to remember them all, but most people have a catalogue of about 5 to 10 in their minds which they use frequently. Now, as I mentioned, the keyboard shortcuts in OneNote do bear a lot of similarities to the keyboard shortcuts in other Microsoft applications. So for example, something like bold. Control B is the keyboard shortcut, and that is the same across every single Microsoft application. Italics is Control I, underline Control U, and of course we have things like cut, copy, and also paste with the same keyboard shortcuts. Now you'll see that as I hover over these different commands on the ribbons, I'm getting a little screen tip which not only gives me a little bit of description text so I know exactly what that command does, it's also showing me the keyboard shortcut. Now, if for some reason when you hover over these icons you can't see those screen tips, I would advise you to turn them on. So let's just take a look at how we do that if we can't see these screen tips. So I'm going to jump up to File, and you'll find this in the OneNote options. And it's this first general tab just here in this first group, User Interface Options. So in Screen Tips style, make sure you have Show Feature Descriptions in Screen Tips. Now, if for some reason you find those completely annoying, then you can also turn them off from here as well. But as soon as you turn those on, it's going to allow you to see those keyboard shortcuts in that screen tip text. So that can be super useful. Now, if you're somebody who likes to work predominantly using the keyboard as opposed to the mouse, if you press the Alt key on your keyboard, you'll see that you get some keyboard shortcuts assigned to the different ribbon tabs. So this is great because it enables me to navigate and do things without touching my mouse. And I know a lot of people who are really into working with keyboard shortcuts use this option quite frequently. It's also really good if you have any wrist problems or something that prevents you from fully working with your mouse. You don't technically have to use it in order to work within OneNote. So for example, if I want to navigate to the Insert tab, I can press capital N, which is going to jump me to that tab, and then I get a whole new list of keyboard shortcuts that I can use to execute a task. So if I want to insert a picture, I could press P, and it's going to open up File Explorer and let me browse for the picture that I want to add. And also with screens like this, if you take a look at the bottom, if I was to hit my Enter key, it's going to open whatever I have selected. Now, if I want to just cancel out of this window, which I do, I can use my Tab key to move to cancel and then hit the Enter key. So I've been able to cancel that dialog box without touching the mouse at all. So those Alt key shortcuts are really useful. Now, the only other thing I really want to mention to you regarding keyboard shortcuts here is if you're somebody who does like their keyboard shortcuts and you want to see a full list of all of the shortcut keys available in OneNote, then you can find a list of those within the Help files. So you can see here in OneNote, I have a Help tab. And once again, this isn't a tab that's turned on by default. So if you can't see Help up here, you're going to want to jump to File, go down to Options, and then jump into Customize Ribbon. And on the right-hand side here, this is where you can select what ribbon tabs you can see in your OneNote. So just go into here and make sure that you have a tick next to Help in order to be able to see that ribbon tab. So if I hover my mouse over where it says Help, you'll see that there's also a shortcut key for this as well. And that is the F1 key. And again, as you would expect, that is the same across all Microsoft applications. So let's jump into Help, and that's going to open a pane up on the right-hand side. And what I can do is type in Keyboard Shortcuts and press Enter to run that search. And the top result I get is Keyboard Shortcuts in OneNote. And if I jump into here, I get a lot of information about different keyboard shortcuts. And then I can view all of the shortcuts divided down by category. So I can jump to Frequently Used Shortcuts, and I can see all of them listed in here. I then have shortcuts for formatting, inserting items onto a page, working with tables, so on and so forth. So this is a really great place to come if you want just to see a full list of all the keyboard shortcuts available in OneNote. Now I will say that throughout this training course, I'm going to try to use keyboard shortcuts as little as possible. And the only reason for that is because it's a lot more difficult for you to see what I'm doing if I'm using a keyboard shortcut, as opposed to if I'm actually clicking on things, bringing up menus, so on and so forth. So if you wonder why I'm not personally using them, I will say that in my day-to-day work, when I'm not recording a training course, I use keyboard shortcuts all the time, but I'm going to be using my mouse throughout the balance of this course. So that's it on keyboard shortcuts. In the next module in this introductory section, I'm just going to be talking to you a little bit about customizing the quick access toolbar. Again, this is something you might have done in previous applications, so if you're familiar with how to do that, then you can probably jump over the next module. But if not, stay tuned. I'm going to show you how you can be more efficient by adding frequently used commands to the quick access toolbar. I'm going to jump over there now, so join me when you're ready. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. In this module, we're going to take a look at customizing the quick access toolbar. Now, once again, this is one of those features that's available across all of the Microsoft applications. So if you are an Excel, PowerPoint, Word user and you're fairly familiar with how the quick access toolbar works and how to customize it, then you can probably skip over this module and head straight to the next one. However, if this is all fairly new for you, stay tuned and let's run through why the quick access toolbar is useful and how you can customize it. Now the quick access toolbar you'll see located in the top left-hand corner, and it's this little toolbar just here. So it's kind of tucked away a little bit. Now I don't have a great deal on my quick access toolbar at the moment, just a couple of commands. And that's pretty much what this quick access toolbar is. You can add whatever commands you like to it, in particular commands that you use frequently, to make them super easy for you to access. So for example, if I'm always inserting pictures into my OneNote notebook, instead of jumping to the Insert tab and then selecting pictures from here, I could essentially add this command to my quick access toolbar, which then gives me one-click access to that particular option. Now by default, when you first open up OneNote, you'll already see a couple of things assigned to your quick access toolbar. So for me, that is the undo command, a very popular command, Control-Z to take us back a step, and also the command that allows me to switch between touch and mouse mode. Now I'm going to be going into that in more detail in the next module, so I'm not going to delve into exactly what this command does right at this moment. And then right on the end here, we have this little drop-down button, and when I hover over, it says Customize Quick Access Toolbar. And what this is going to show you is a number of different commands that you could add to your quick access toolbar. So I could add forward, I could add redo, print preview, so on and so forth. So these are merely suggestions of popular commands that you might consider adding to that quick access toolbar. Now, something else I want to draw your attention to here is, as you can see, currently my quick access toolbar is tucked away in the top right-hand corner. Now, whilst I don't have too many options as to the location of this toolbar, I do have one more option, and that is I can choose to show it below the ribbon. So I'm going to click that, and you can now see that it pulls it down to below my ribbons. Now, this is where I like to have my quick access toolbar because I just find it a lot easier to get to and less tucked out of the way. So let's click our drop down again and look at how we can customize and add commands to this toolbar. Now, if I wanted to choose any of these, I can just select them. So let's add the redo button, like so. I could also add the print button, and let's add print preview as well. And you'll see it just builds a long list of all of these different commands, which I can then execute simply by clicking on them. So it's a lot more efficient than having to find them in the ribbons or in that file area backstage. Now, one thing you will notice is that obviously we just have a selection of commands which we can choose from here. But what if you want to add a command that's on the ribbon? Well, as I said at the beginning, if I insert a lot of pictures into my OneNote notebook, then what I could do is right-click on the Pictures command and say Add to Quick Access Toolbar to add that on. And you'll see that you have this option whenever you right-click on any of these commands. And of course, I could carry on going and build myself up a nice long list of all of the commands that I access frequently. Now, in addition to adding them this way through the right-click menu, if I click the drop-down again, you'll see right at the bottom we have a More Commands option. And that's going to jump you straight into the OneNote options and into the Quick Access Toolbar area. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see everything that you currently have on your Quick Access Toolbar. And what you can essentially do is go through all of the commands available in OneNote and add them in from here. So it's definitely worth noting that not every single command that's available in OneNote is listed out as a command on ribbons. So what you could do is click the drop down here, and I could say All Commands, which is going to show absolutely every command available in OneNote. Or if I just wanted to see the commands that weren't available to select from a ribbon, I could select Commands Not in Ribbon. Now I'm going to select All Commands to bring up the full list that's available. So I'm going to scroll through and I can add a couple of things from here. So let's say Customize Tags is something I do all the time. I'm going to select it, click on the Add button to add it over to my Quick Access Toolbar. And of course, once I have it over here, I could then choose to remove. So let's remove Print Preview if I want to get rid of any of these. So I could go through this big long list, just adding commands I use frequently to my Quick Access Toolbar. Now, another thing that you can do within here is you can reorganize the way these are listed out. So for example, undo and redo are kind of in the same category, so I want these to be together. So I'm going to click on redo, and then I can use my arrows to move that up one. Maybe I want touch mouse mode to be right at the beginning, so I'm going to select it and say move up, just to put that at the beginning. So you can organize your list however you like. Now, something else you might want to add in here, and again, this is more of an organizational tip. If you start to get quite a lot of icons on your Quick Access Toolbar, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of separation between commands of similar type. And we can do that by adding in a separator. Now you'll find separators available at the top of any of these lists that you select. And it's this just here. I can click on Add to add in a separator. And I can add in as many separators as I like. So I'm going to add another one. I can then use my up and down arrows to move these into position. So I'm going to have one separator there, and I'm going to move this one down too. So now when I click on OK, you can see how that looks on my Quick Access Toolbar. I now have these very faint lines in between separating out different groups of commands. So it's just a little bit easier on your eye to have them organized in this way, as opposed to just a big long row of random icons. So that is how you can customize your Quick Access Toolbar. And it is something I always advise people to do because it does really increase your efficiency when you're looking for commands you use frequently in OneNote. In the next module, we're going to finish off this introductory section by talking about using OneNote on a touch device. So I'm going to grab a coffee, head over there now, and I look forward to you joining me. Hi guys, welcome back. Now, I didn't want to finish up this introductory section without giving a bit of a shout out to all the touchscreen users out there. More and more these days, people have tablet devices and also laptops that have touchscreen capabilities. I am in fact using one of those laptops as we speak. And out of all of the Microsoft applications, OneNote is the application that is most suited to people who use touch device with a stylus pen. And you'll see as we work through this course, particularly in certain sections when it comes to things like handwriting, things are a lot easier if you are using a touch device with a stylus because, let's face it, trying to write a word using your mouse never works well. So before we finish up this section, I just want to run through a couple of the options for all of the touchscreen users out there. Now, currently I'm working with the mouse and keyboard, and so I'm in what we call mouse mode. Now, helpfully, one of the default commands on my quick access toolbar is this option just here, the touch mouse mode option. So this allows me to toggle between using a mouse and using touch. Now, when you're using a mouse and keyboard, the interface is really optimized for that particular usage. Whereas if we jump into touch, you'll see that the screen changes slightly more because it's then going to optimize for people who use a touch screen. So let me briefly switch into touch mode. Now, the most obvious thing that's changed here is that I have a lot more space between the different commands on the ribbons. So what it's doing here is just accommodating for your finger. Your finger is a lot bigger than your mouse pointer, and so you need a little bit more room because the last thing you want to be doing is pressing one command and accidentally hitting 2 or 3. So if you're watching this course now and you are using a touch device, I would advise you to switch into this particular mode. And remember, if you can't see this option on your quick access toolbar by default, then you can jump into more commands and then find touch mouse mode in here and add it to make it super simple for you to switch between the two modes. Now, we are going to be typing a lot of text throughout the balance of this course. And again, if you are using a touch device, then you're going to want to make sure that you know how to pull up your touchscreen keyboard. Now, mine's located right in the bottom corner on my taskbar. And you can see as I hover over, it says touch keyboard. And if I click that, that's going to pull up my touch keyboard, and I can then go through and I can start to use that to type in different words and notes. So make sure you know where that is because it's going to make your life a whole lot easier as we're going through this course. Now, we're going to dip back into touch a little bit later on, particularly when we get to this section of the course here where we start to draw things. As I said, it's a lot easier to do if you do have a touch screen with a stylus. But of course, as always, I will try to accommodate both keyboard and mouse users as well as touch users. So that's it on touch. I am going to very quickly toggle back to mouse and keyboard mode, and I will see you in the next section. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. This is Deb, your host, and we are about to get into section 2, which I've titled Getting Started with OneNote. And over the course of this section, we're going to learn some of the skills that you need to know in order to get going with OneNote. And we're going to start out in this first lesson by just taking a look at how we open OneNote. I'm going to show you how to open a notebook, and then we're going to do a quick tour of the OneNote interface so you understand the ribbon structure and the kinds of commands that you'll find on the different ribbons. So let's dive in. Now, as I mentioned in the previous section, I'm going to be demonstrating OneNote for desktop. So what I could do in order to launch OneNote is click in the search bar down here, and I'm using Windows 10, type in OneNote, and you'll see that I have OneNote listed underneath my apps. So I could launch it from here simply by clicking on this menu item. But what I've actually done is I've pinned the application to my taskbar just to make it super simple for me to access. And it's all the way down here, right in the middle. I'm going to click to launch. Now, when you open OneNote for the first time, it's probably going to look something similar to this. So you can see there right in the middle, we have this big old message that says you don't have any open notebooks. And that would be correct. I haven't created a notebook and I don't have an open notebook. Now, one thing you'll notice is that with no notebook open, a lot of the commands on the menus are grayed out. So in order to give you a quick tour of this interface, I'm going to need to either create a new notebook or open a notebook that I have saved off. So I'm going to do the latter. I'm going to open a notebook that I've already created. And we are going to go into this in more detail a bit later on, but for demonstration purposes, let's quickly run through the process. Now, much like any other Microsoft application, you'll see that we have our ribbon tabs at the top. We have our file menu, which jumps us into that backstage area. And if you are familiar with other Microsoft applications, you'll know that this is kind of where you'll find those admin-y style tasks. So if you need to create a new notebook, open, print, share, all of those kinds of things you're going to find in here. So what I want to do is I want to jump straight down to open. And you'll see at the top some of the notebooks that I've had open recently, and these are notebooks that I have stored in OneDrive. And then if I scroll down, I can see some more lists. So on the right-hand side, I've got notebooks selected, and this is showing me any notebooks that I've recently used. So I could select to open one of these. Alternatively, if I can't see the notebook that I want to open listed either down here or at the top here, what I can do is choose to open from other locations and jump across to my OneDrive, or maybe even browse my local drives to find a notebook that I want to use. Now, as I said, we're going to get into this a bit more later on. So for the time being, I'm just going to open something that I've opened recently. And I'm going to choose this one here. That is my work trips notebook. Click to open it up. So this is a very basic notebook, but we're not going to worry about the content too much at this time. Really what I want to do in this lesson is just run you through the interface so you kind of start to get an idea of where things are located on the different ribbons. Now again, something that's very consistent across all Microsoft applications, your home ribbon is going to contain all of the things that you're probably going to utilize most often. So we have our clipboard group, which contains cut, copy, paste. We have our text formatting options and also styles if we want to apply them. We then have a big section here called tags, and tags is something that's really cool, and we're going to talk a lot about this a bit later on in the course. I can email my page from here, and I also have some interaction with Outlook on the end here, and again we're going to cover this a bit later on. Moving across to the insert ribbon, this contains all of the things that you can insert into your notebooks. So that might range from things like tables, file printouts, attachments, even Excel spreadsheets. You can also insert pictures, whether they be saved on your local drives or located online. You can add screen clippings or screenshots directly into your notebook. And you can also do cool things like record audio and video from directly within your OneNote notebook. This is also where you would come if you wanted to use some kind of page template as well. So the Insert tab you come to whenever you want to insert something into your notebook. We then have our Draw tab. And this is probably most useful if you are somebody who uses a laptop or maybe a touch device that has a stylus. Because this is where you can come to draw, make annotations, handwrite your own notes, and insert things like shapes. Now, whilst it is possible to do these things using a mouse, a lot of the time it is quite hard to use a mouse to do handwriting. As I said, this does tend to work best if you're using a stylus. Moving across to the next tab, we have our History tab. And this really relates to having lots of people collaborating on one notebook. You'll see as we move through the course, you can share your notebook with team members, other people, and then everybody can jump into the notebook and make changes, their own annotations, things like that. So the History tab really comes into play if you want to essentially see changes that have been made to a notebook by author, if you want to find specific changes, or even if you want to see different versions of your page. And again, we're going to get into how all that works a little bit later on. Moving across, we have our Review tab, and this is pretty much what you would expect to find on any Review tab in your Microsoft applications. This is where you would come to spell check, use the thesaurus, check your accessibility, change things like language, or even password protect a section. We also have something in here called linked notes, which is a very useful feature, which we'll explore in more detail later on in the course. The View tab is where you can view your notebook or your page in different ways. And you can also format your page background. So if you want to change your page color, or maybe you want to add rule lines to your page, you can definitely do that. You can do things like zoom in and out to make things a bit easier to see, and also make modifications to how you're displaying your window. And then finally on the end here, we have our Help tab. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this course, the Help tab isn't always there by default. If you think that you're going to utilize this tab, then it's definitely worth jumping into OneNote Options and turning that tab on. Now, I'm not going to focus on this because we have already been through this tab earlier on in the course. So aside from that ribbon structure, Underneath, we have our quick access toolbar, which we've seen how to customize. And then we have our notebook. And the way that a notebook is structured is it has sections and then it has pages. So I liken this to a paper notebook that maybe you have dividers in. The dividers are very similar to the different sections that we have up here, and you can see them showing as tabs. And then within each section, I have pages. And if you cast your eyes over to the right-hand side, in this blue panel, you can see I currently have 3 pages, Milan, Rome, and Venice, within the Italy section. And of course, you can add sections and you can add more pages to each section. And this is in general how all of the notebooks that you create will be structured. Don't forget, if you feel that you need a little bit more room when you're working in your OneNote notebook and you want to temporarily minimize the ribbon, you can definitely do that by clicking on this small little up arrow over on the right hand side. And this up arrow does have a keyboard shortcut, Control plus F1, and that's going to minimize up your ribbon, which gives you a little bit more room when you're working in your notebook. If you want to bring your ribbons back after you've collapsed them up, if you click on any of the tabs, the ribbon will drop down again. If I click back on my notebook, that ribbon's going to disappear. Now, if you decide that you want to have that ribbon back permanently, what you need to do is just click on one of the ribbons again to pull it up, and then go over to the right-hand side and click on the Pin the Ribbon icon. Again, Control plus F1. And that's going to lock that ribbon in place. So that is pretty much what your interface looks like when you open up a workbook. So the main point I want you to take away here is this notebook structure. You have your sections running in tabs across the top, and each section can contain multiple different pages. And we're going to see in the next lesson exactly how we create a new notebook from scratch and how we start to add sections and pages. So I'm going to jump over to the next module now, and I look forward to you joining me. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. It's time for us to start creating some stuff. Let's start creating some content in wonderful OneNote. Now, in the previous module, we took a quick tour around the OneNote interface. And of course, we're going to be dipping in and out of these ribbons and exploring all of the commands over the balance of this course. But the first thing we want to do, the most fundamental thing in OneNote, is we want to create a new notebook. And this is a very simple process. So we're going to go up to the File tab. And as you would expect, we want to make sure that we've got New selected. Now, what you will see in here is essentially a split screen. On the left-hand side, we have different locations. So this is where we want to save our new notebook. And then on the right, we have a list of recent folders. So recent folders that you've saved into or used. Now, this is a reasonably new account that I've set up. So currently, I only have one recent folder listed, and that's my Documents folder in OneDrive. And the way that this works is that when you create a new notebook, you essentially save it first, which is why we're being asked to select a location. Now, I'm going to save my notebook into OneDrive, but before I do that, let's just take a look at the other options that we have. So you could, if you wanted to, choose to save this directly to a SharePoint team site. You could save it to this PC. You can add a place. So if you have more than one OneDrive account, you can choose to add those from here to make them easy to access. Alternatively, if you just want to save your notebook locally, you can do that by selecting Browse, and it's going to jump you into File Explorer, and you can then jump in and choose a folder. Now, one thing to note here, if you want to share your notebook with other people, then your notebook must be saved to a location that's shareable. So for example, saving your notebook to your desktop is not a shareable location, whereas saving your notebook to maybe a network drive that you have within your company, or even saving it to OneDrive cloud storage, those are considered shareable locations. Now, whilst it is a good idea to have a little bit of an idea as to if you want to share your notebook right at the point where you're creating it, it doesn't matter so much if you create it in one location and then change your mind, because you can move your notebook at a later time if you then want to share it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to save to OneDrive, and I'm going to put it just in my OneDrive Train IT Now Limited folder. And when I click it, it's going to jump me to that folder. And I'm going to say I want to put it in the folder Notebooks. And then I'm going to give my notebook a name. So I'm going to click in the notebook name field, and I'm going to call my notebook Project Artemis. So maybe where I work, we are working on a project that's got a code name of Project Artemis, and I want all of my notes, all of the meetings, all of the content related to this project to be contained within this notebook. So I've given my notebook a name, and I'm going to say create. And this is a really important point. You'll see straight away it's popped up with a little message that says your notebook has been created. Would you like to share it with other people? And that's come up because I've saved it in a location that is shareable. So if I wanted to, maybe I know right now that I want to share this with the rest of the Project Artemis team, I could choose invite people. Now I'm not going to do that at this stage because I want to talk you through that process a bit later on. So I'm going to say not now, and it creates my notebook. And what you'll see is that my notebook name is now listed just here. And as I hover over, it gives me a little bit of information in that screen tip. So it says I can click to view other notebooks. So if you have more than one notebook open, if you click just here, you're going to be able to see all of your notebooks listed, and you can easily switch between the different notebooks that you're working in. Now, obviously, I only have Project Artemis open, which is why it's the only one I can see listed here. Something else you can see when I hover over is you can see the location where I have this notebook saved. So OneDrive, Train IT Now, Notebooks. And it's telling me that it's up to date. And this is another important thing to note. OneNote notebooks automatically save. So you don't have to worry about going into File and Save. You don't have to press Control S as you're working. Everything automatically saves and synchronizes. And this is particularly important if you've saved your notebook to cloud storage like OneDrive. Every change you make will be synchronized. Every change that anybody else makes to your team notebook, if they have access, will also be synchronized. So all this message is telling me is that all of the changes are up to date. So that is basically how you create a notebook from scratch. If you wanted to create another one, you could just jump back into File, go to New, and go through exactly the same process. Select your location first, give your notebook a name, and then it's going to open in OneNote and it will be listed in your Notebooks dropdown. And we're going to create a couple of notebooks a bit later on so you can see how you can very easily switch between the two and work in multiple workbooks at the same time. Now in the next lesson, we're going to delve a bit more into notebook properties. I'm going to show you the different things that you can change. And I'm also going to show you how you can essentially close a notebook and come out of it when you're done. But for now, that is it. I will see you in the next module. Hello everyone, welcome back to the course. We are down in section 2 where we are getting started with OneNote. And in the previous module, I showed you how to create a new notebook from scratch and select a location in which to store it. So what we're going to do in this module is I'm just going to show you how you can modify the properties on a notebook and also how you can close a notebook when you're finished with it. So let's take a look at properties first of all. Now, as we've already discovered, any notebook that we have open will be listed underneath this drop-down. And currently, I only have Project Artemis open. Now, if I want to view the properties for this particular notebook, if I right-click my mouse, you'll see right towards the bottom in this little menu, we have a Properties option. So let's select it and see what we get. Now, when you go into notebook properties, there isn't a great deal of information that you can change in here, but there are some important things that you should be aware of. If, for example, you want to change the display name of your notebook, so maybe I want to change this to Project Alpha, Project Beta, something else, I can come in here and I can edit the display name. And what you'll see underneath is it says does not affect the actual notebook folder name. So what that's essentially saying is you are merely changing the display name. The name that you can see in OneNote, it doesn't change the folder name. So for example, if I just quickly pull up File Explorer, this is essentially where I have my notebook saved. In OneDrive in the Notebooks folder, and you can see here a couple of workbooks that I have within this folder. And one of them is Project Artemis. So if I was to change the display name to Project Beta and click on OK, it's going to change the name here, but what it's not going to do is change the actual folder name within Notebooks. So that's a really little important point to be aware of. Now, so we don't confuse things, I'm actually going to go back into my properties and I'm just going to change that name back to Project Artemis. The next property that we can change is the color of the notebook. And we have a drop down here which brings up a little palette of muted pastel shades, and we can essentially color code our different notebooks. It makes them stand out from one another. You could even color code notebooks that are maybe related with the same color, just as a way of organizing your notebooks in a more visual way. So I'm going to select this purple color for this particular notebook. Underneath that, we have the location. So it's telling me the location where my current notebook is stored. And if I decide I want to move that somewhere else, I can click on Change Location. Once again, it's going to open up File Explorer and I can choose a different folder to save my notebook into. And then finally at the bottom, it's telling me what my default format is. So it's saying that this is a OneNote 2010 to 2016 notebook format. And the Convert To button is grayed out for me. So if I was to open a notebook that was in a different format, I could choose to convert it to 2010 to 2016 format. But at the moment, we are all good with how we have our format set. So I'm just going to click on OK. So now when I click the drop down, you can see that my notebook is that purple color. So those are the properties that you have for each notebook. As I said, not a great deal, but some important things in there. Now, the final thing I want to talk to you about in this particular module is how to close notebooks. So you might have multiple notebooks open, and if you've finished working in one of them for the day, you're going to want to close down that particular notebook. Now, in most Microsoft applications, when you want to close something, you would jump up to File and there would be a handy little close button in here. But you can see with OneNote, we don't actually have that, so we need to close in a slightly different way. Again, we're going to click the drop down. We're going to hover the mouse over the notebook that we want to close. Right click, and in here, you'll find a Close This Notebook option. And when I click it, it's going to remove that notebook from the list. Now I want to stress here, you haven't deleted your notebook, it hasn't disappeared, you've literally just closed it down. And of course, if you want to reopen it, you would go back up to File, down to Open, and because this is a notebook that I've recently opened, the quickest way for me to open this would be to scroll down, make sure I'm clicked on Recent, and then underneath the Notebooks tab, I should be able to see the last notebook that I had open at the top of this list. So I'm going to click Project Artemis just to reopen this notebook. So modifying your notebook properties and closing notebooks, very straightforward, very simple, but very important. In the next module, I'm going to talk you through the process of deleting a notebook, because this is not as easy as it might sound, and is something that I find confuses people quite a bit because it works a lot different to how other things work in Microsoft. So I'm going to grab a coffee, jump over to the next lesson, and I look forward to you joining me over there. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. This is still Deb and we are still down in section 2 where we've been taking a look at some of the fundamental skills you need to know in order to get started with OneNote. And in the previous modules I've shown you how you can create a notebook from scratch, and ours is called Project Artemis. And I've also shown you how you can modify those notebook properties. And we finished off by taking a look at how we can close down any open notebooks once we've finished using them. Now, the subject that I want to discuss in this particular module is deleting notebooks. because I've been training OneNote for quite a few years now, and I find that this is a really common question. People get very confused when it comes to deleting because it's not as straightforward and obvious as you might expect it to be. So for example, if I said to you, how do you think you would delete a notebook? The logical assumption is that you might jump into your notebooks list, right-click on the notebook, and you have an option in here to delete the notebook. But what you'll find when you come into this right-click menu is that you actually don't. The only thing you have is close this notebook. Now, whilst that will get rid of the notebook from your notebooks list, it hasn't deleted it. It's just closed it, and you can jump back into File and reopen that notebook whenever you like. However, there will be times where maybe you've completed a project and you have no use for the notebook anymore, where you want to actually delete it and all of its contents. So how do we actually delete a notebook? This is where it's really important to know where you have your notebook stored or saved. So if I pull up File Explorer, so here I can see the two notebooks that I have saved into the Notebooks folder in OneDrive. So what do you think I might do here in order to delete this notebook? Well, again, the logical assumption as I've led you down this path is that you can come into here, click on the notebook you want to delete, and press the delete key on your keyboard. But look what happens. I'm going to delete it. And we're going to wait a few seconds and you'll see that it automatically comes back again. And this is where I find people have a problem. They try to delete it from OneDrive, but it keeps appearing back. Now, the reason why that is happening is because you can see that I'm working within File Explorer. And I have my OneDrive synchronized to File Explorer so I can work with my OneDrive files without having to log in to the Microsoft 365 portal. But what happens is my portal synchronizes with my folders in File Explorer. So as soon as I delete Project Artemis, the synchronization happens. OneDrive can see the Project Artemis notebook still in Microsoft 365, and so it pulls it back into my folder structure. So with all that said, how do we actually delete this notebook? Well, we need to log into the online portal. So I'm going to minimize File Explorer, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close down Project Artemis because this is the one that we're going to delete. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say close this notebook. What I'm then going to do is jump across to my Microsoft 365 portal. Now I'm already logged in, and for those of you that are familiar with using Microsoft 365, this should be instantly recognizable. And what I want to do is I want to access OneDrive from here. So I'm going to select the OneDrive icon, and then I'm going to go to my Notebooks folder. And this is where I have my OneNote notebook saved. So what I need to do is select the notebook, in this case Project Artemis, and delete it from my portal. And you'll see that when I delete it from here, it doesn't come back again. So now if I jump back into File Explorer, you can see that in my Notebooks folder, I don't have that Project Artemis notebook anymore. So essentially it is deleted. So this is a really important point to note if you want to delete a notebook that you have saved to cloud storage. Now I will say that if the notebook that you've created is just a local notebook, it does work in a slightly different way. But we're going to save that for the next module where we're going to jump in. I'm going to show you how you can create a locally stored notebook, and then we'll look at the difference when it comes to deleting. But for the time being, that is it. I will see you in the next module. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. In the last module, I showed you the process of deleting a notebook that's been stored into OneDrive. So what I want to do in this lesson is really just talk a little bit about locally stored notebooks and show you how you can manage those, how you can delete them, so that you can see the difference between local notebooks and notebooks that are stored in the cloud. So let's jump in and let's create ourselves a couple of notebooks. So we're going to go up to File down to New, and I'm going to recreate one saved into OneDrive because we did delete Project Artemis and I kind of want to use that one. So let's select OneDrive. I'm going to select the folder of notebooks and I'm just going to call it the same thing. Let's call it Project Artemis just to recreate that notebook and click on Create. Now, because I'm saving to a shareable location, it's asking me if I want to invite people. I'm going to say not now because that's something I'm going to do later. And there I have my notebook opened again. And of course, we've already seen we can right click and maybe I want to go into the properties and I'm going to change the color to blue and click on OK. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create another notebook, but this time I'm going to save it to my local drives, not in OneDrive. So back up to File, down to New, and this time I'm going to browse for a location to save. Now what I'm looking for here is a location that doesn't synchronize. And these days with OneNote, if you have it installed on your PC, even your desktop will synchronize. So I'm going to select a folder that I know doesn't synchronize, which is the Downloads folder. Now I know this is an extremely strange folder to save a notebook into, but as I said, I just want one that I know for sure doesn't synchronize at all. So I'm going to give my notebook a name and I'm going to call it My Personal Notebook and click on Create. Now, did you notice the difference there? It didn't ask me if I wanted to invite people to my notebook. And that's because OneNote has recognized that this is a locally saved notebook, and so it's not shareable. Another thing you'll notice is that if I click this drop down, you can now see both of my notebooks in here. Now, if I just make a quick change, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Properties, and let's just change the color of the folder again and click on OK. Notice this little syncing icon that comes up. It was pretty quick, so you may have missed it. Let me do it one more time. I'm going to right click, go to Properties. I'm just going to change the color of the notebook. Look for this icon when I click on OK. Can you see it just there? That tells me that the notebook is synchronizing to cloud storage. Now, when it comes to locally saved notebooks, it doesn't matter how many changes you make, you're never going to get that icon because it's just saving to your local drive. It doesn't have to synchronize with cloud storage. So if you're wondering what that little sync icon is that appears every now and again when you're working in a notebook that's been saved to the cloud, that's what it's doing. It's just updating any changes that you've made or any changes that other people have made to the notebook with the copy in the cloud. Now, when it comes to local notebooks, you can right click and you can change the properties in exactly the same way. So I can change the color of the icon, the location, and the display name as well. So maybe I want to remove the word notebook. Let's just delete that out as it's a bit of overkill and just call it My Personal. Click on OK, and there we go. And I can very easily switch between my two notebooks. Now, when it comes to deleting locally stored notebooks, it works in a slightly different way. Now, I still can't delete it from within OneNote. So if I right click, I don't have a delete option. So what I need to do is open up File Explorer again and navigate to the folder where I have this notebook stored. So I've stored this notebook in the Downloads folder. You can see it there sitting at the top. So if I want to delete it, I can actually just delete it directly from here because I don't need to jump into cloud storage because it's just saved locally. And because there's no synchronization happening, it's not going to keep reappearing. However, the first thing I'm going to want to do is close down this notebook. I can then jump into the folder, click on the notebook, press delete, and that notebook is essentially deleted. So the process is a little bit shorter, a little bit easier when you're deleting local notebooks. Now, in the next module, we're going to start to actually expand on our notebook by adding in sections and pages. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. I'm going to head over there now and I look forward to seeing you. So far in this course, we've been taking a look at some of the more admin-y tasks that you might wish to do within OneNote, such as closing notebooks, creating new notebooks, and also the process for deleting notebooks. It's now time to move on to something a little bit more interesting, and that is to start to build our notebook with content. Now, before we can start adding content in, we need to understand the structure of a notebook. And that means talking about sections and pages. So currently I'm in the Project Artemis notebook. And you can see at the top I have a tab that says New Section 1. Then if you cast your eyes over to the right hand side, you can see I have Add Page at the top here, and then something that says Untitled Page. Now, Untitled Page is currently where I'm clicked. Now I'm going to speak a little bit more about pages in the next couple of modules, but for now we're going to focus on sections and really organizing our notebook. Now the way I like to think about this is I like to imagine a book. Project Artemis is the book title, and then within that book I might have part 1, which would be the section, and then I would have the different chapters, which might be the different pages. So these are kind of like dividers within your notebook. And within each section, you can have numerous different pages. Now, when it comes to sections, there are lots of different things that you can do with them. So let's start out by running through some of the basics. So currently I'm clicked on New Section 1. And if I right-click my mouse, you'll see that I get that contextual menu come up, which has lots of different things that I can do with this particular section. So the first thing I have in this menu is the rename option. Now, obviously, most of the time, you're not going to want to keep that tab as New Section 1. You're going to want to give it a more meaningful name. So I'm going to select Rename, and I'm just going to overtype what I have on the screen, and I'm going to call this tab Meetings. Now, what I can do here is I can either hit the Enter key on my keyboard, or I can just click away in order to set that. So that is my first section. Now I want to have lots of other different sections within this notebook to store different types of information. So I'm going to add another section in. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The most easiest and probably the most obvious to everybody watching this lesson is that we have a little plus sign, and when we hover over it, it says Create New Section. That's going to give me another tab, and I can now type the name of that tab. And this one is going to be called Courses, and hit Enter. Now the other way that I can add a new section is if I right click on any one of the tabs, you'll see that I have a new section option down here as well, which is basically going to do exactly the same thing. So for this one, I'm going to call this Offices and hit Enter. And I'm going to carry on just adding a couple more sections into this notebook. So let's click the plus, and I'm going to call this one Travel, hit Enter, click the plus again, and we're going to call this one Costs, and hit Enter. So very quickly I've been able to add into my notebook all of these different tabs, and I can then just click on them to switch to those different sections. And what you'll also notice is that the section tabs are color coded. So if you want to keep them all different colors, that's absolutely fine. However, if you have sections that maybe relate to each other, a nice way of just visually indicating that to whoever is looking at the notebook is to make those tabs the same color. So maybe both Offices and Travel are related and I want to make them both orange. What I can do is click on that Travel section, right click my mouse, and right at the bottom of the contextual menu I have a section color option. So I might want to change this to orange as well. And so visually, I've now created a link between those two different sections. Now, of course, when you have a whole bunch of sections added into your notebook, there might come a time where you want to reorder them or rearrange them. And again, that's very simple to do. If you want to move a section, all you need to do is grab that particular section. So let's say the Courses section, click your mouse, drag, and you'll see as I drag back and forth across the section tabs, I'm getting that little black arrow. And that's indicating to me where that section is going to be dropped when I let go of my mouse. So I want this to be the first tab in this particular notebook. So I'm going to let go of my mouse and it moves that tab across. Another way that I can move section tabs is to utilize that right-click menu also. So for example, if I take this Meetings tab and right-click my mouse, within that right-click menu, you'll see that we have a Move or Copy option. So if I select that, I can now choose where I want to move this particular tab to. And what it's showing here are all of these sections that are currently in my notebook, and all I need to do is select the one that I want to move this particular section after. So I'm going to say I want meetings to move after the travel section, so I'm going to select travel and click move, and it's going to move that across. Similarly, if I right-click my mouse and just jump back into there, I might want to copy a section instead of moving it. So if I want to copy this meeting section and I want that copy to be placed after the cost section, I'm going to select costs and then click copy at the bottom, and it's going to give me a new tab that's called meetings too. I can then right click, go in and rename that to something else. So we're going to call this one schedule, like so. And you'll see that because I copied it, it takes on the same tab color as that particular section. Now in this case, I don't want these two to be the same color, so I'm going to right click, section color, and I'm going to make this a purple color. And of course, I'm sure you get the idea now, but if you want to delete a particular section, you can right click and you have a delete option in here. Now it's worth noting, and you'll see this a bit later on when we start talking about pages, when you delete a section, it's going to delete all of the pages within that section as well. So just bear that in mind before you actually execute this particular task. But more about that later. So that is the basics of adding new sections and a few tips and tricks there when it comes to managing them. In the next lesson, I'm going to talk to you about section groups. So I'm going to head over there now, and I look forward to you joining me. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. In the previous module, I introduced you to the concept of sections, and we took a look at some of the things that you can do to add new sections and also manage them. So we're going to kind of follow on from that in this particular module, and I'm going to talk to you about section groups and just show you what they are and how you can use them. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm actually going to delete one of these sections that I've created. So I'm going to delete this courses section because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make courses a section group. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say delete, and I'm getting a message here saying, are you sure you want to move this section to deleted notes? So I'm going to say yes. Now that's actually an important point to know. When you do delete sections or pages or anything from your notebooks, they don't disappear entirely. They go into what we call the notebook recycle bin. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the course, so just keep that in your memory for a bit later on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section group. And this is really just another way of organizing your notebooks. And this is particularly good if you have a lot of information in any one notebook. Now to create a section group, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is right click on any of the tabs and you can see you have an option here for new section group. And what that does is it gives me another little heading up here that currently says new section group, and you can see the icon next to it has all of these different tabs. So that gives you an idea as to what we're doing here. This is a way of grouping different sections together. So I'm going to call this section group courses and hit enter. And what I'm going to do within here is create sections within this section group. So if I right click, I'm going to say new section. And what you'll notice is something a bit strange. It adds it as if it's just another new section. It doesn't necessarily fall directly underneath where we've created the new section group. So I'm going to go ahead and create my sections that I want to be part of my section group. Now, this whole Project Artemis is about the rollout of Office 365 across all of my company's global offices. And part of that rollout program is going to be training. And we want to retrain everyone on the applications within Office 365 or Microsoft 365 as it's now known. So I'm going to have a section for each of the courses that are going to be offered. So the first section is going to be called Word. I'm going to create another new section called Excel, another one called PowerPoint. We're going to have one for OneDrive, and I could carry on going. Now, obviously, this is just a demo, so I'm going to stop there, but you would add as many sections as you needed. Now, once you've added in your sections, if you want to group them together underneath this courses section group, all you need to do is right click. So let's right click on this first section tab. I'm going to say move or copy. I'm going to select the section group, which is courses, and then I'm going to say move. And you'll see immediately it jumps me from my main notebook into this kind of subgroup. So Project Artemis courses section group, and there is my section. So if I want to jump back, I just click that green arrow. So if I take this Excel section, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag over and hover my mouse on top of courses, and you'll see it jumps me across. I can let go and it moves that section. Now, unfortunately, there is currently no way in OneNote to make multiple selections, so you can't select multiple sections and then move them all in one go. Unfortunately, you have to do them all individually. So I'm going to do the last two. Let's do PowerPoint. I'm going to drag and drop. And then the final one, I'm going to right click. I'm going to say move or copy, select courses and click on move. So now I have these essentially sectioned off from the main bulk of my notebook, and I have my courses section group just there. So if you have a particular section that has lots of different subsections, then this is a great way of organizing your notebook. So we're starting to get some kind of structure to our notebook now. We've got our notebook ready, we've got all of our sections, we've got a little section group on the end there. Now we want to start adding pages and content. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next module. So I'm going to head over there and I look forward to you joining me. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. This is still Deb and we are heading towards the end of section 2. And over the course of this section, we've really got to grips with some of the basics of working in OneNote. And in the last couple of modules, I've shown you how you can add sections into your notebooks and also section groups. It's now time to start adding pages because there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of when you're doing this. So as I mentioned, within each section, you can have different pages, and each of those pages will contain content. So let's first walk through the process of adding pages to sections. So currently I'm clicked on this Offices section. Now what I want to have here is I want to have maybe an overview of all of the different offices which we're rolling out Microsoft 365 to, and then I might want to have a specific page that lists out each office individually with bits of information that are particularly important to that office. Now, if you cast your eyes over to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that you have this kind of orange bar running down the side. And this is where you basically create all of your pages for your sections. And OneNote will automatically create a page called Untitled when you add a new section. And that page is currently what I'm clicked on within the Offices section. Now, currently it's called Untitled, which isn't particularly meaningful, so I'm probably going to want to go in and rename this page so it's easy for me to identify. So my first page in this section is just going to be called Overview. So I've clicked my mouse just above where we have the date and time, and I've typed in the word Overview, and you'll see as soon as I do that, over on the right-hand side, the page is now renamed. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to add a few more pages. And we do that by clicking on the Add Page link at the top of that right-hand pane. So let's click on Add Page. You'll see automatically I get another untitled page, and I can now type a title for this particular page. So this one is going to be called Europe. I'm going to add another page called North America, another page for Asia, another page for Africa, and then one final page for Australia. And as we move through this course, I'm going to be adding information onto these pages. So adding pages in itself is a very simple and straightforward process. But what you might not know is that you can also add sub-pages. So for example, underneath each of these pages, which I've just created, I might want to have sub-pages for each of these specific office locations in each of these regions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a page, and you'll see it adds it to the bottom. And I'm going to call this one London. I'm going to add another page. I'm going to call it Paris. I'm going to add another page and let's call this New York. And I'm going to add 2 pages for each of the regions. And we'll do Bangkok and we'll say Durban. And then finally, for Australia, we will have Sydney and Melbourne. So you can see that now I have quite a collection of pages, and at the moment they're not really organized as I want them to be. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to move the pages I've just created underneath their relevant locations. So for example, we've got London, and that needs to go underneath Europe. So all I need to do to move a page is click, drag, and you'll see I get that line, let go, and it's going to move that page. I'm going to grab Paris, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to move that up. Now, of course, when I'm moving these, I can go to the right-click menu and move or copy, but for me, by far the quickest way of doing it is just simply to drag and drop them. So I'm going to move New York and Chicago underneath North America. And for pages, you can actually move multiple pages in one go. So I want to move Shanghai, and if I hold down my control key, I can also select Bangkok, and then I can move both of those underneath Asia. So I'm going to do the same for Durban and Johannesburg. Hold down control, drag and drop, and then finally at the bottom we have Australia with Sydney and Melbourne. So these look slightly better, but the structure still isn't quite there, because essentially these city pages that I've added are sub-pages of the continent. So I want to indicate that these are in fact sub-pages. And again, there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. The first thing I can do is if I click on London, if I click my mouse and just drag to the right very slightly, you can see I can indent it. So this is a sub-page, so I'm going to indent it once, and I could do the same for Paris. Click, drag once, and that essentially makes London and Paris sub-pages of Europe. And the structure is now reflecting that. Now I can do this a slightly different way, so let's select New York, hold down Control, and also select Chicago. If I right-click, I can say Make Subpage, and it's going to move both of those in. I'm going to select Shanghai, Bangkok, Durban, Johannesburg, Sydney, and Melbourne. And I've done that, again, simply by holding down the Control key as I'm clicking. Right-click, Make Subpage, and it's going to move all of those in one go. So right away, I now have a much better structure. It's a lot easier for me to see what's going on here. And as you can imagine, you can have subpages of subpages as well. So if I just show you a quick example, if I add another page, and let's call this St Kilda, which is a very specific area in Melbourne, what I might want to do is make the St Kilda page a subpage of Melbourne. So again, I can click on it, I can drag once, twice to make that a subpage of a subpage. And you can carry on going, making whatever structure it is that you need. And of course, if we right click, we now have that contextual menu come up, so everything in here is related to pages as opposed to sections or anything else. You can promote the subpage, so that's essentially pulling it back up a level, or you can collapse all subpages for whichever one you're clicked on. So for me, that was Australia. It's collapsed them all up. I can then click that drop down arrow to bring those back again. I can right click, I can move or copy, I can add a new page from here as well, and you can also see the keyboard shortcuts in there. Now I'm actually going to delete this page, so let's select delete to bring me back to how we were. So I've got a pretty good outline or structure going on this offices section. And of course I can go to each of these sections and start adding in different pages. You don't necessarily have to do that before you add content, you can definitely do it as you go. But for me, on this particular section, it works best if I set them up beforehand. So that's how you can very simply add pages to a section and also make subpages. And that draws this section to a close. In section 3, this is where the fun begins. We're going to start adding all different types of content into our notebook, so you can get a really good feel for the application and what it can do. So I'm really looking forward to this section. I'm going to head across there now, and I look forward to you joining me. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, at the end of each section, I'm going to also throw in a module using OneNote for Windows 10. Because this is something that is available for free and comes automatically installed for anybody who has Windows 10 on their PC or laptop. So in general, what we tend to find is that if somebody doesn't have a Microsoft subscription necessarily, they can still utilize OneNote, but the Windows 10 version. So in order to cater for those people who are using this version, I'm just going to do a module at the end of each section, just recapping the main points in that particular section. So let's get started with our first look at OneNote for Windows 10. So if you do have a Windows 10 device, you'll probably find that you already have OneNote pre-installed. So I'm going to jump down to search and I'm going to type in OneNote. And you'll see the first one that comes up is OneNote for Windows 10. So let's click to open this app and take a look at the differences. So immediately what you'll notice is that the look and feel is completely different to OneNote for desktop. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the interface. Now we still have essentially a ribbon structure, but our ribbons look slightly different. They're a bit more compact. We have a home ribbon that has all of our basic formatting options on it. An insert ribbon if we want to do things like insert tables, files, pictures. A draw ribbon for making annotations and inserting shapes. A view ribbon for doing things like zooming in and out, changing the page color, adding rule lines, so on and so forth. And then finally, we have a help ribbon that's going to allow us to access help on demand if we need it. And then all the way over in the right-hand corner, we have some icons. So this first icon here allows me to open a feed. So this is basically going to allow me to see a feed of all activity that's going on in my OneNote notebook. I then have this little light bulb icon, which is basically my search. So this is the tell me what you want me to do pane. I have a notifications area where I can see exactly what's going on in my notebooks. I have a share button that's currently grayed out. I can choose to enter full screen mode. And then I have 3 dots in the top corner or ellipses that's going to allow me to access my settings. Now, when it comes to actually viewing my notebooks, if you cast your eyes over to the left-hand side, this first icon just here is the Show Navigation button. So if I click this, this is going to open up a pane where I can view all of my notebooks. Now, I haven't created a new notebook yet, so that's why there's nothing in there. But when I do, this is where you'll find them, and this is how you can switch between your notebooks. So let's start out by doing exactly that. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can create notebooks in OneNote for Windows 10. If you take a look in the big empty space in the middle where it says Start Taking Notes, it says tap or click here to create a new notebook. You can also open one of your existing notebooks from the notebooks list. So that's an important point. If I click the drop down where it says Notebooks and then click on More Notebooks, it's going to allow me to open an existing notebook that I have saved off. So if I want to go in and open up Project Artemis or Personal, I can do that simply by clicking on that notebook and then opening it. Now in this case, I actually want to create a brand new notebook, so I could click somewhere in this center pane. Select a name for my notebook and then click Create Notebook. Alternatively, I could right-click up where it says Notebooks and select New Notebook. Or if I click on Notebooks, right at the bottom, I have a plus symbol that says Add Notebook. So I'm going to call this notebook Project Sierra. I'm going to select an account and click on Create Notebook. So now I have my new notebook and it's created a new section with a default name and also an untitled page for that section. Now, of course, I'm going to want to rename this particular section. So I can right click my mouse to pull up the contextual menu and say Rename Section. Now I'm going to call this To-Do List and click away to set that, and then I can name my page. So let's say Today's List. What you'll notice is right at the bottom, if you want to start adding more sections and more pages, you can. So I'm going to click Add Page, Tomorrow's List, Add Page, next week's list, so on and so forth. And I can do the same with sections. So let's say Add Section, things to remember, and then maybe I want to name this page emails, so on and so forth. So pretty easy to create notebooks, sections and pages. And of course, if you click that drop down, this is where you're going to see a list of your notebooks. And if I had more than one, I can easily switch between them from up here. If I right click on this notebook, you can see that I have other options that are similar to the desktop version. For example, I can change the notebook color to something that's a bit brighter. So let's say pink. And another thing I can do here is if I want to close this notebook and essentially remove it from my list, if I right click, I have an option to close the notebook from here. Now, when it comes to things like sorting or moving, rearranging sections and pages around, again, the process is very simple. It's just drag and drop. So if I want to reorder these pages, for example, if I want to move tomorrow's list above today's list, I can click, drag, just to reorder those. The same thing goes for sections. So I can click on things to remember and drag it above to-do list just to reorder those items. I also have a sort button over here, so I can sort these pages in alphabetical order by date created or date modified. Now you can also create subpages in this version of OneNote. So let me add in a couple more pages. I'm going to call this one Monday. Let's add another one and call it Tuesday. And what I want to do is make Monday and Tuesday subpages of next week's list. So what I can do here is select both Monday and Tuesday, right click my mouse to pull up the contextual menu, and you see all of the different options you have in there related to pages. So I can delete my pages, I can cut, copy and paste, I can move them to other sections, and I can also make these two selected pages sub-pages. So let's click that option. You can see that they indent very slightly, and next week's list is now a collapsible and expandable menu item. And of course, if I want to go in and right click and say move this particular page, I can then select where I want to move it to. So let's say things to remember, and I can say move. It's going to move that across, and now when I click on things to remember, I can see that page sitting there. So in this case, it's really important where you're clicked when you right click. If I right click on a section, I get a contextual menu full of options related to that section. Whereas if I right click on a page, I get a completely different contextual menu that allows me to select options related to managing this particular page. Now what I'm going to do here is select Tuesday, right click and say delete page. And if at any point when you're working in OneNote for Windows 10, you want to get rid of this navigation pane to give yourself a little bit more room, if you click on the hide navigation icon, it's going to minimize that down, and now you have loads of room from which to type your notes. So that is it. That is all the information that you need in order to get started working in OneNote for Windows 10. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. We're down to section 3 now, and in this section we're going to explore all the different tools that you have available for adding content into your notebook. And really this is what a notebook is all about. Of course, once we've created our sections and our pages, we're going to start to want to add content to each of those pages. And in OneNote there are so many different types of content that you can add in, so that what you end up with in the end is a really nice, functional, informative and interesting way of storing notes. And throughout most of this section, we're going to be focusing on the Insert tab up here, because this is where you'll find all the different types of content that you can insert into your notebook. Now, before we get on to some of the more interesting and exciting aspects of OneNote, we're going to start out with the basics, and that is adding a text note onto a page. Now, that might seem fairly straightforward. I have my cursor flashing flush with that left-hand margin, and as you could probably imagine, I can start typing a note. And that is very true. Now, when you type a text note in OneNote, it does work a little bit differently to something like Word. In Word, when we have a document open, we start typing from the left-hand margin and work across the page. And unless we use things like tabs or maybe indents, we're pretty much limited to starting our typing from the left-hand side of the page. Now, OneNote works in a slightly different way, because what you can see is I can literally click my mouse anywhere on this page, my cursor starts flashing and I can start typing. So it has much more of a scrapbook-like quality. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click over towards the left-hand margin and I'm going to start to type my first note on the overview page. So this is my first note, just a little bit of information about the rollout. And what you'll see is that when you type in a text note, it kind of puts it in this little placeholder. And this is kind of like a movable text box in a way. You can see that if I hover over the grey bar that runs across the top, I get that crosshair. It just means I can pick this note up and I can literally drag and drop it anywhere on the page that I like. So it is a lot more flexible than when you're typing text directly into a Word document. What you'll also notice is that on the end here, I have these two arrows, and that just allows me to resize this placeholder. So I can drag it in if I want to make it smaller, and drag it out if I want to make it wider. And as you would imagine, if I right-click my mouse on this grey bar, I get a contextual menu that has options in it relating specifically to this particular placeholder and the text contained within it. Now, if I want to edit any of this text, I just click back in the placeholder, and I'm going to add a little bit of a title here. I'm going to hit enter, and let's call this Rollout Dates. And of course, I can treat this like any other text across all of the Microsoft applications, and I can apply formatting. And if we jump up to the Home tab, this is where you'll find all of your text formatting options. So it might be that I want to change the font style of all of this text. Now what I can do there is, because the text is contained within one placeholder, I can just select that placeholder. I can jump up and I can change this to something else. So I'm going to do my favorite font, Sago UI, hit enter, and it's going to change that. And if I want to make this heading stand out a little bit, I can maybe make it slightly bigger. So let's make that 12. I might want to make it bold. I can change the color. I can do all different kinds of things. And if you've used any of the other Microsoft applications, you'll know that this is fairly standard when it comes to font formatting. Now I'm going to add a little bit more text into here. So I'm going to press enter a couple of times. And now I'm going to add some bulleted text. So again, up to the Home tab, into that basic text group, and we're going to utilize our bullets. And I can add my bulleted text much like I would in any other application. Now everything that I've typed so far has been contained within this one placeholder. Now you don't have to carry on typing absolutely everything within the same placeholder. You could click somewhere else and start to type in some more text. Like so, and then I'm going to add some more bullet points in. Like so. Now one thing you'll notice here is that as soon as I started typing in a different placeholder, it switched back to the default font, which for me is Calibri. So if you want to keep things consistent, then you'll probably have to go in and change that font to match the rest of the font in this particular document. And I can then pick that up and I can drag it underneath. So what I'm trying to say here is, don't think that you're limited to just always typing in one placeholder. You can have multiple going on the same page. Another thing you can also incorporate into your text notes is that you can utilize styles. And you'll find those on the Home tab in the Styles group, and this can sometimes make it a little bit easier to achieve a level of consistency when it comes to the headings that you're using in your notebooks. So for example, instead of going through and manually formatting the headings like I did with rollout dates, I could select the heading and utilize a style instead, which has pre-formatting already applied. So I could say heading 1 to change that, and I know that every time I add a heading 1, it's going to look exactly the same throughout the entire notebook. So don't forget about those. You have headings 1 to 6. And you also have other styles in here for page title, quotes, anything else that you want to add in. Now the final thing I'm going to do in my text notes is I'm just going to highlight the dates that this rollout is going to start and end, just so it's super clear to everybody who is looking at this notebook. So I'm going to highlight January the 1st, 2021, and I'm actually going to apply some highlighting. like so. Now I want to apply the same highlighting to the 31st of July 2021, so I could repeat the same process. Alternatively, I could utilize the Format Painter. So I'm going to highlight January the 1st, 2021. I'm going to go up to the home ribbon and select Format Painter, let go, and it's going to apply that highlight for me. So Format Painter is a great tool if you just want to copy formatting from one piece of text to another. It can save you a lot of time, particularly if you have a lot of manual formatting applied to a specific piece of text or paragraph. And we're going to be utilizing Format Painter quite a lot as we work our way through the course. So for the time being, that is the basics of adding in a text note into your notebook page. Over the next few modules, we're going to move into adding all different types of content in. And we're going to start out by taking clippings from web pages and pulling those into our notebook. So I'm going to head over to the next module now, and I look forward to seeing you there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. We're down in section 3 where we're talking about adding content to OneNote. And in the previous lesson, I showed you the very simple task of adding text notes to your OneNote pages. So we're going to move up a gear now, and we're going to start to add content from other sources. Now, there are many different ways that you can do this in OneNote, and we are going to explore all of them over the balance of this section. But I want to start out by introducing you to a little tool that you can install that's going to make your life a lot easier in certain respects. And that is the Send to OneNote tool. Now, you won't find this when you're actually working in OneNote. There is no button on any of the ribbons called Send to OneNote. This is a little app that you can install, which makes it super easy for you to send things like Excel spreadsheets or Word documents, or even emails directly to a specific page in OneNote. So I'm going to show you first of all how you can install the app. It's very, very simple. And then I'm going to show you how to use it. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you don't have this app installed is just open up your preferred web browser. So for me, that is Microsoft Edge, and then search for Send to OneNote app and hit enter. And the first link you're going to get takes you to the Microsoft web page. And you can see there it is, Send to OneNote. We have a little description underneath. So it says, Send to OneNote lets you print from any app to a OneNote page. Once it's in OneNote, you can access it from any device, even if you're offline. So this is also great if you have maybe something like a PDF document and you want to bring that information into your OneNote page so it's viewable to everyone. So what you do from here is you can see over on the right-hand side, it is actually a free app, which is always good. I'm going to click on Get, and that's going to ask me to open the Microsoft Store. So it's jumping me across to the application within the Microsoft Store, and from here I can install it. Now the first thing you'll notice is that I actually already have this product installed. If you don't, what you'll see here is an install button where I currently have wishlist. So all you need to do is click install. It takes a few seconds for that to download, and that is pretty much it. Once you've done that, you are good to go. So let's take a look at how we would then use it. So I've jumped across to Outlook just to show you an example of how you can utilize Send to OneNote. Once you've downloaded and installed the app, and you might have to restart your applications in order for this to show. But for example, on the home ribbon in Outlook, you can see in the Move group, I now have this little icon here, Send to OneNote. And that's going to allow me to directly send any email message that I have selected to a specific page in my OneNote notebook. So I can see here that I have an email which is all about team leader assignments for this rollout project. And it has a file attachment there as well. So this is important information that everybody's going to need to know. So this would be great content for me to add into my notebook. So I'm going to click the OneNote button and you can see what I get. So underneath all notebooks, I have Project Artemis. Now I'm going to click on the plus to expand that out, and you can then see all of my different sections and tabs. Now if I have a specific page in OneNote that I want to send content to, I can expand, for example, the Offices section and see all of the pages that I have underneath there. So what I might decide to do is select the overview page, click on OK, and there we go. You can see that I now have that email added into my OneNote page. It's telling me the subject, who it's from, who it's to, the date it was sent, and I also have the attachment just here. So what I can do is double click on this attachment and it's going to open it up. And the cool thing about this is if any changes are made to this particular spreadsheet, those are going to update because you've just created a link to the original spreadsheet. Now, it might be that now that I have this email on the overview page, I think to myself, actually, you know what? This needs to go on a different page. So what I might want to do is create a new section. Let's click on plus, and I'm going to say important emails. And I'm going to call this page team assignments. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to move that content across to this new page. Now I can do that by selecting the placeholder, and the simplest way of doing this is to do a cut and paste. So I can either jump up to my home ribbon and select cut from there, or I can utilize the keyboard shortcut of Control X. I'm going to jump across to important emails and the team assignments page. I can do Control V to paste or select my paste button just to paste that in. So a nice simple way of adding content using that Send to OneNote tool. Now just to show you another example of how you can utilize this, if I had this information in a Word document as opposed to an email, I could also send this directly to OneNote as well. So any content you have in spreadsheets, documents, PowerPoint presentations, once you've installed this app, when you go to the File area and go down to Print, underneath Printer, you can select OneNote Desktop. And then when you click on Print, you're going to get the same thing. You need to select a location in which to print this piece of content to. So I'm going to expand Offices again. I'm going to select Overview and click on OK. And you can see exactly what it does there. It's going to pull that information in. Now, one of the drawbacks of this, which you can see immediately, is that it's brought it in with a load of white space at the bottom, so everything else gets pushed down underneath. Now, I have scoured the internet trying to find a way to get around this, and there doesn't appear to be any particular method of cropping out all of that white space. So just think about that before you utilize it to send Word documents and Excel spreadsheets to your notebook. But for now, that is how you utilize Send to OneNote. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how you can use OneNote's clipping tool. So I'm going to head over there now, and I look forward to you joining me. Hello guys and gals, and welcome back to the course. We're down in section 3 where we've been taking a look at how we can add different types of content to our OneNote notebook. And in the previous module, we saw how we could download and install the Send to OneNote app in order to send documents, different files, PDF content to OneNote. Now we're going to stay along similar lines, and when I say similar lines, I just mean that what I'm going to show you next is also an app that you have to install, and that is the OneNote Clipper. Now, OneNote Clipper is pretty much the same as any other clipping utility that you might find in Microsoft applications. Most of the applications these days contain some kind of screen clipping tool, which makes it super easy for you to grab content off of different applications or maybe even web browsers and pull that into whichever application you happen to be working in. Now, the cool thing with OneNote is that there is a specific Clipper extension that you can add into your browser to make clipping things off the web super easy to pull into a specific page in OneNote. So what I'm going to do in this module is to show you where you go to install the OneNote Clipper, and then we'll do a quick demonstration. So the first thing you need to do is open up a web browser of your choice. And for me, I'm using Microsoft Edge, but you could be using Chrome, Firefox, Safari, whatever it is that you choose. Now, depending on what your web browser of choice is, will depend what you search for when looking to install the OneNote Clipper. So for me, because I have Edge, I would search for OneNote Clipper App Edge. If you're using Chrome, you might want to type in OneNote Clipper App Chrome, so on and so forth, just to make sure that you get the correct download. So I'm going to click on Search. And I'm going to click on this link just here, which is going to jump me across to the Microsoft Store. Now what you'll see here is the Web Clipper app. And because I've already installed this, I only have a remove button. If this is the first time that you're using this, then you'll have an install button just here. So you just need to click it, run through the process. Again, it just takes a few seconds. It's a very small little app. And once you've installed it, you should then see a button in your web browser in the toolbar running across the top that says Clip to OneNote. And you can see mine just there. So once you have it installed, let's take a look at how you can use it. So I've just jumped across to the Microsoft 365 homepage. And this is a web page that just gives me some information about Microsoft 365 and the different subscription plans. So maybe I want to add into my document some information related to the business plans for Microsoft 365. So I'm going to scroll down and see if anything takes my fancy. And I can see here we have some information relating to the costs of subscriptions. So this might be something that I want to add into my rollout plan for when we're trying to work out our budget. So what I can do is I can clip this information and send it directly to a page in OneNote. And I'm going to do that by clicking on my Clip to OneNote tool. Now, if this is the first time that you're using it, it's going to ask you to sign in with a Microsoft account. Now, once you've signed in, you're going to have a few different options when it comes to clipping. And by default, it's going to clip a full page. So if I wanted to send everything on this page to OneNote, that is my default option. Now, in this particular case, I don't want to send the full page. I just want to select a region. So let's select region, and you'll see it says drag and release to capture a screenshot. The other thing you'll notice is that the page background has kind of faded out very slightly, and my cursor has changed to a crosshair. So this means that I can just click and drag over the region that I want to clip. And you can see it adds it to this clipboard ready to send to OneNote. Now, if I have lots of different things that I want to clip off of a certain web page, then I can just select to add another region, and then scroll through and find the next piece of information that I like to clip. So let's say, for example, I want to add in this. I'm going to select it, and it's added that to this clipboard as well. And I could carry on going, collecting different pieces of content. Now, once I've finished and I want to send these to my page in OneNote, I then need to select the location. So if I click this drop down, you'll see it's going to show any OneNote notebooks that I have. And the one that we're working in is Project Artemis. So I'm going to click to expand, and then I can see all of my different sections. Now with this, you can't select a specific page. You can only select a specific section. So I'm going to select Offices, and I'm going to say Clip. It goes away, it clips those regions. It tells me it's been successful, and I can either choose to view in OneNote, or I can just pull it up from my taskbar. And what you'll then see is if you look at all of the pages for this particular section, right at the bottom, I have a new page. And when I click on it, it's labeled it Microsoft 365 for Business. And there are my clips. And another really useful thing that it does is it gives you a direct link back to the page where these clips came from. So if you essentially want to view the source or maybe read more information, you have the link there. You can simply click on it, and it's going to jump you back to that specific page. Now, of course, because you weren't able to select a page in your notebook to send this to, you might want to do some rearranging at this point. You might want to copy and paste this information into a different section. So I'm going to select this entire placeholder simply by clicking on it. And I'm going to do a simple cut from the home ribbon. I'm going to go to the overview page. I'm going to click my mouse at the bottom, and I'm going to say paste. And that then pastes that content in. I can resize it to make it a bit neater, but I essentially have my nicely clipped content with a link back to the original document. Of course, what I would then need to do would be to go in and delete that temporary page. So over in my pages list, I'm going to select it, right click, and I'm going to say delete just to get rid of that. So very simple and very straightforward to utilize that clipping utility. In the next module, I'm going to show you how you can add pictures and video to your OneNote notebooks. So I'm excited. I hope you are too. Please join me in the next module for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. We're down in section 3 where we're talking about adding content to our OneNote notebooks. And in the previous module, I showed you how you can utilize the OneNote Clipper app in order to clip information, content from the web and pull it through into OneNote. So now what I want to do over the course of the next few modules is show you how to add pictures, video, and different types of content into your notebooks. So for this, we're going to need to be on the Insert tab, and we're going to focus on this Images group just here. Now, the first thing that we have in Images is a screen clipping utility. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why on earth would I need that? You've just shown me how to use the OneNote Clipper. Well, the OneNote Clipper is an installation for your browser. So essentially, it only really allows you to clip content from the web. Now, the screen clipping utility that you have available within OneNote allows you to clip anything that you have open on your PC. So maybe you want to clip something from a PDF document, or maybe an Excel spreadsheet, or from a PowerPoint presentation. Pretty much anything that you can open on your PC, you can clip using the screen clipping utility within OneNote. And you can see as I hover over it, we get the screen tip that tells us what this is going to do. So it's going to allow us to take a snapshot of part of your screen and add it to the page. It says OneNote will hide while you capture web pages, documents, or anything else. And one interesting point to note that we're going to get onto a little bit later when we cover searching is that OneNote can search for text in screen clippings. And that's a really cool little feature. If you clip something, so maybe a paragraph of text, you can make it searchable. But more on that specific aspect a bit later on. Let's concentrate on utilizing this screen clipping utility. Now, what I've done here is I'm still in the Offices section, but I'm clicked on the London page. And I've added a text note that gives the address of the London office. Now, what I might also want to do here is maybe add in a map that shows where the office is located. So I've opened up Google Maps and I've navigated to the address of the office. And maybe what I want to do is take a screen clipping of a certain section of this map. Now, because this is in a web browser, I definitely could utilize my Clip to OneNote utility, but I'm going to do this a slightly different way. I'm going to utilize the screen clipping option. Now, one of the things that you have to be careful of here is that whatever it is that you want to clip needs to be open directly behind OneNote. Because what happens is as soon as you click on screen clipping, it minimizes OneNote and allows you to clip whatever it finds behind it. So if you want to clip a section from a Word document, you need to make sure that that is directly behind OneNote. So a way that I do this is I want to clip this, so I want to have it as the last thing open, and then I'm going to open up OneNote on top of it. So let's click on screen clipping. You'll see it minimizes down and shows what's directly behind it. My screen has kind of faded away and I have my cursor as a crosshair. So I'm going to clip a certain section of this particular map and pull it through to OneNote. So let's just drag a big region over here and I can see Ropemaker Street in the middle. Let go, and like magic, it pulls it directly into my page. What you'll also see when you take a screen clipping in this way is that you have underneath the date and time that this screen clipping was taken. Now, if you don't want this screen clipping information, you can delete it out. And an easy way of doing that is as I hover over this text, you'll see I get this little arrow or tab at the side. If I click on that, it's going to highlight that text and I can just press the delete key to get rid of it. I can, of course, then click on the image and I can resize it if it's a little bit too big. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if I right click on this image, I can choose to make the text in the image searchable. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because we're going to do that a bit later on, but just hold that piece of information in your minds until we get to that section. Let's do another screen clipping, but this time of something that's not on the web. Now, earlier I showed you how you can send a Word document to your page in OneNote utilizing the Send to OneNote tool under File Print. But if you remember, when we do it that way, we get a lot of white space in the bottom. So what I could do instead is use the screen clipping utility just to clip out that part of the Word document. So again, I need to make sure that I have the Word document open directly behind OneNote. I'm going to jump to screen clipping. It minimizes down and I can then just clip this specific area and pull that through. So you can see that's a much neater way. I don't have loads of blank space at the bottom. And once again, I can resize that as necessary. So screen clipping is a tool that I use all the time in OneNote just to grab different pieces of content. I find it a lot quicker and a lot easier than other options. And if I'm adding content where I'm not too concerned about it being updated dynamically, then screen clipping is just a great way to get information into a page. In the next module, we're going to start adding some life to our pages by adding pictures. So please join me for that. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. This is still Deb and we are still down in section 3 where we're looking at the different methods that you can use to add different types of content into your OneNote notebooks. And so far we've seen how we can add text notes, we've seen how we can add screen clippings, and now I want to show you how you can insert pictures into your pages. So once again for this, we're going to be working predominantly on that insert ribbon. And we're sticking within this images group. Now you'll see within here we have two options. We have pictures and we also have online pictures. So if you have a particular image that you want to add into your notebook and you have that image already stored off locally, maybe into your My Pictures folder, then you would use this option just here. However, if you want to browse online for a picture to use, you could do that through the online pictures option. And I'm going to show you an example of both of these. So let's start out with pictures that I have already saved off. So currently I am clicked on the Europe page within the Offices section. And what I have on this page is just some suggested activities for free time in both of the European office locations, so London and Paris. So if this is a rollout project, we're maybe sending trainers to these different offices around the world, and those trainers might have to stay there for a couple of weeks. They're going to have some free time. We want to give them some ideas of things they can do whilst they're there. And in order to illustrate that point, make it a little bit more interesting, we're going to add some pictures in. So you can see here I have free time suggested activities, and I've applied a heading 1 style to that particular piece of text. I then have London underneath, and I have a heading 2 style applied to that. And what I now want to do is add in a couple of pictures of some of the main sites in London. So I'm going to jump up to the Insert tab. I'm going to jump into Pictures, and it's going to open up File Explorer. So all you need to do now is navigate to whichever folder you have those pictures stored in. And there we go. I can see a selection of pictures. So I'm going to add in Tower Bridge. I'm going to hold down Control and also select the London Eye and click on Insert. And it's going to pull both of those pictures through. Now, one thing to note when you insert multiple images in this way is that they will become part of the same container, the same placeholder. So maybe if I want this bottom image to be next to this image of the London Eye, if I click on it, when I drag, I'm essentially dragging it out of that particular placeholder. Now, you might think to yourself, well, why is that a problem? Well, if I then wanted to add some more text in, if I hit enter a couple of times, it's going to move down one image, but this image is going to stay where it is. So just be aware of that. If you do drag an image out of its original placeholder, you may have to reorganize its placement on your particular page. Alternatively, I'm going to Control Z a couple of times just to put this back how it was. So now what I might want to do here is click next to London, press enter a couple of times, and then just add some bullet points, which has London Eye, Tower Bridge. And of course, again, if you don't like the font, you can go in and change the font for any of the text in your notebook. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click somewhere over in this blank space on the page, and I'm going to create another placeholder, and this one is going to be called Paris. I'm going to double click and give that a heading 2 format so it matches London. I'm going to drag the placeholder out and just reposition that very slightly. Now when it comes to lining things up, because really I want this Paris heading in line with this London heading, you are a bit limited with options, but one thing I will generally do is jump across to the View tab and turn on Rule Lines. So this just gives me some paper lines running across the page, and I just find it a little bit easier to line things up when I have these turned on. So now I'm going to add some bullet points. We're going to have Eiffel Tower and Sacré-Cœur. Let's apply some formatting so it matches the rest of the document. And now I'm going to add in my images. So up to Insert, across to Pictures. It's going to default to the last folder that I was in. I can pick up the image of the Eiffel Tower, hold down Control, select Sacré-Cœur, click on Insert, and it's going to add those images in for me. And of course, these images can be resized if you need to do that. But there we go, fairly straightforward to insert pictures that you have stored off locally. So now let's take a look at how we can add in online pictures. Now this is pretty much exactly the same as jumping into Google or a different web browser, Googling an image, saving it off and inserting it, but it's just a little bit quicker as we're missing out some of those steps. What I can do is click on Online Pictures, and it's going to jump me across to a image gallery browser, which is powered by Microsoft Bing. And what I can do is I can utilize images in any of these galleries, or alternatively, if I know what I'm looking for, I can just type my search term into that online pictures search bar. So I'm looking for an image of Big Ben. I'm going to hit enter. And there you go. So let's select this one and click on Insert. And it's inserted that very nicely into the bottom of this document. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to add an image for Paris this time. So let's jump up to Online Pictures once more. And I'm going to type in Notre Dame and hit enter. This image looks pretty good to me. I'm going to select it. But one thing I want to point out here is when you are adding online pictures into your documents, it's really important that you check this little setting just here. You want to make sure that you're searching and using only images that have a Creative Commons license. So it basically means you can use that image for not-for-profit reasons. So if this is just a OneNote team notebook that's going to be shared between me and maybe 3 of my colleagues, then that's absolutely fine. Any of these images I can use because I'm filtering for Creative Commons license. Now, even when you have this filter on, if the notebook that you're adding it into is going to be used for any kind of commercial purpose, so if you are going to demonstrate this to a wide audience, or if you're going to create a YouTube video, something that you're going to get money from, then you need to delve a bit further as to whether you can use this image. A lot of people make the mistake when it comes to copyright by thinking that if they have Creative Commons selected, they can use any image that comes up in any type of document. And that's simply not the case, and a lot of people have been caught out by this. If you're using it for a non-commercial purpose, then yes, normally it's fine, but otherwise you might want to review. And you'll see here right at the bottom, it says you are responsible for respecting others' rights, including copyright. And then you have a link to learn more here. So if you're not entirely sure what Creative Commons licenses are, then it's definitely worth having a read up about that before you start to use these images in any commercial projects. Now, just while we're in here, we do also have a filter button, which allows us to search for specific types of images. So I can search by size. I can search by type, so if I want to photograph, clip art, or if I want something that has a transparent background. Now this is an option I use fairly frequently. Sometimes maybe I'm looking for an icon or maybe a logo, but I don't want to have any background, even if it's just a white background. I just want images that have transparent backgrounds. And you can also do things like search for images by their layout, so square, wide, tall, and also color or black and white photographs only. So don't forget about those filters that you have within this little area. Now for this particular image, I don't need to do any of that. I'm going to click on Insert, and it's going to pull that through. And once again, I can just go ahead and resize that as necessary. I'm then going to jump up to the top of this document and just add in another bullet point. So we're going to say Big Ben, and then for Paris, we're going to say Notre Dame, like so. So pretty simple and straightforward to add pictures into your notebooks. If you've used Microsoft applications for a while, this will be like second nature to you. We're going to move on to the next module now, where we're going to talk a little bit about inserting video into your notebooks. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope to see you over there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. In the last lesson, I showed you how you can insert pictures, both online and locally saved pictures, into pages in your OneNote notebook. But did you know that OneNote also has the ability to embed videos right into your pages? And adding videos really makes your notebooks come alive. And they're particularly good if you're creating an interactive notebook to share with others. It's worth noting at this stage that inserting video is a little bit different to inserting pictures. When it comes to video, you cannot insert a video that you have saved off locally. So if you've got your own video stored off to File Explorer, there isn't an option to browse your local drives to upload that video and add it into your notebook. What you can do, however, is pull in videos from other video sites, so online video essentially. And if you take a look at that insert ribbon in the media group in the middle, you'll see exactly what I mean. We just have one option here, which is online video. So if you have a video that you've uploaded to YouTube, then you can essentially embed that link into the page. Now, if you're wondering which sites you can embed video from, I would advise you to jump onto the Microsoft help page. If you search for embedding videos in OneNote, you'll get to this page, and that goes through and shows you all of the currently supported sites and services. And you'll find in there most of the ones that you're going to want to use are listed there. So we have things like Dailymotion, Vimeo, YouTube, TED Talks, all of those kinds of things. And Microsoft do advise that you check back here periodically, as they're consistently adding more and more video sites to this particular list. So let's jump back to OneNote and let's take a look at how we can add an online video. Now for this, I'm going to go across to my courses section group, and I've got the Excel section selected, and what I want to do here is add in a tutorial video related to Excel pivot tables. So this might be something that we want to send out to different staff members in offices to back up the in-person training that they're going to get when we roll out Microsoft 365. Now, if I was to click on online video, what you'll see is that immediately it asks for the video address. And you'll see underneath it says view supported video, which is going to jump you to that help page that I was just showing you. So really what you need to do here is jump onto YouTube or Dailymotion or Vimeo, grab the URL, and then come back to this option. So that's what we're going to do. I've just jumped into YouTube. I have the pivot tables in Excel open. I'm going to copy the URL, Control C, jump back to OneNote, and then go to online video, Control V to paste it in. If I click on OK, it's then going to embed that video into my page. And what I get here is a clickable link. So if I click this, it's going to take me to YouTube where I can view the video, but I can also view the video from within my OneNote page. So if I click on play, that video is going to start, and I can move through the video as I would on YouTube or any other video application. So super straightforward. You just need to make sure you grab the URL first and then just paste it in to embed that video. That's it for now. I will see you in the next module. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. We're down in section 3 where we've been taking a look at adding different types of content into our OneNote notebooks. And in the previous few modules I've shown you how you can add in screen clippings, pictures, online pictures, and also online video. Now in this and the next couple of modules we're going to concentrate on adding files into our notebooks. And adding files is just another way of gathering together information that's going to be useful to anybody who has access to this notebook. It's also a great way of saving time. So for example, instead of retyping information or maybe relying on links to documents that might become unavailable if you go offline, you can bring content that you need directly into OneNote either as an attachment or as a printout that you can annotate. And you'll find these options on the Insert tab in the Files group. And it's these three that we're going to concentrate on over the next couple of modules. So let's start out by taking a look at inserting file printouts. Now, when you insert a printout, it basically allows you to select a file that you have stored in OneDrive or locally. And that could be any kind of file. It might be a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint, PDF, anything like that. And it's going to print the contents of that file into wherever you're clicked. So in my case, I'm in the Schedule section and I'm clicked on the Course Plan page. So let's click on File Printout. And you can see it's going to jump me across to File Explorer, and I have a Word document here called Course Descriptions that I want to add into this notebook. Now it's worth noting that I just have some junk text inside this Word document to demonstrate this, but hopefully you'll still get the idea. So I'm going to click on Insert, and you'll see exactly what that does. So it prints the contents into the actual page. Now it's worth noting that this is a copy, so when I click on this page I get my resize handles at the side, but it doesn't let me directly edit the text from within OneNote. However, if I did want to update this text, you'll see just above I basically have a link back to the original Word document. So what I can do if I want to update is I can double click to open in Word. I can go in and make my changes. Save the document, and I'm going to close down Word. Now what you'll see when I go back to OneNote is that it doesn't automatically update. You can't see that text that I've just added onto the beginning of the first paragraph. What I do have just above, it says the printout below may be out of date. Right click here to refresh. So all I need to do is right click, and then in the contextual menu I have a refresh printout option. So if I click this, it basically reloads that printout, and now you can see that my changes have updated. So that's one important point to note. When you insert it, you're essentially getting a copy that you can't edit within the notebook, but you can edit the original and then just refresh the printout to update it. Now, if you come across a situation where you have inserted a printout and then maybe you want to copy and paste this first paragraph into another page, well, you can do that as well. If you click on the printout and right click your mouse, you'll see you have an option here for copy text from this page of the printout. So I'm going to click to copy, and that's going to copy everything. It doesn't allow me to select a specific paragraph. So I'm going to just quickly add a new page. And if I right click and paste, it's going to paste all of that text in, and I can then jump into the text, and this is in fact editable. So I can make some changes, I can select different paragraphs, copy and paste elsewhere, so on and so forth. So that's a really useful little option, as it essentially makes the text editable and allows you to do other things with it. So let's add another page and move on to the next option, which is file attachment. So this is more like adding a file attachment like you would in an Outlook email or something along those lines. If I click File Attachment, again, it's going to jump me into File Explorer, and I can select a document to attach. So this time I'm going to select the course descriptions PDF, click on Insert, and I get a choice of attaching the file or inserting the printout. Now, if I was to select Insert Printout, that is basically exactly the same as selecting File Printout from here. So we've pretty much just run through how that works. So let's go for Attach File instead. And as you would expect, this looks a lot like an email attachment. It just gives you a link to your document, and of course you can double click to open that up, and because it's a PDF, it is opened in a web browser for me. Once you're in here, of course, you then have lots of different annotation tools if you do want to make changes to it. But essentially, what you have here is a link to the original document. So any changes made in that document will automatically update. The next time you open, you're going to see the latest version. So that's all very straightforward. Now, before we carry on, so we don't get too crazy, I'm going to rename some of these pages. So I'm going to title this one Course Details. And the other page that we created, I'm actually just going to delete that one out. Now, the final option we have in here is to insert a spreadsheet. And if you click the drop down, you have two options. You can insert an existing Excel spreadsheet, or you can create a new Excel spreadsheet. So let's go for existing Excel spreadsheet first of all. Again, it's going to jump me into File Explorer. I can then select an Excel spreadsheet, click on Insert, and this time I get three different ways that I can insert this file. So I can attach the file, which means it's going to show very similar to this PDF. It's going to be a link back to that original document. I can insert the spreadsheet, or I can choose to just insert a specific chart or table. So let's go for the Insert Spreadsheet option. And there we go. So I'm going to move this over like so. Now, this spreadsheet had 4 different workbooks. So I had a chart, which you can see there. I then had some data, and I then had a list of employees. And you can see here it's brought everything in that workbook into my OneNote notebook. And once again, if you do want to make any changes, if I double click on where it says Course Plan Europe, it's going to open up in Excel. And let's just make a simple change. Let's make a formatting change here. I'm just going to change the color of these bars to a dark red color. I'm going to save and close down. And this time you'll see that it has automatically updated with those changes that I've made. So it works slightly different to inserting a printout, even though it looks fairly similar. It does link directly back, so any changes you make to the original document will automatically update in your OneNote notebook. Now I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here, and let's take a look at this final option, which is New Excel Spreadsheet. So what this essentially allows you to do is create a new Excel spreadsheet directly from within OneNote. And you can see here I have an edit button, and if I click on edit, it basically opens up a temporary Excel spreadsheet for me, and I can start to add data. And we're just going to add a couple of columns. Click on save. Close it down, and you can see that that data then updates. So a great way of creating a spreadsheet kind of on the fly if it doesn't already exist somewhere on your system. So those are all the different ways that you can add files and documents into your OneNote notebooks. In the next module, we're going to move on to talking about recording, and I'm going to show you how you can add audio and video recordings into your notebooks. So I'm going to head over there now. I look forward to you joining me. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. We're still down in section 3, where we've been taking a look at adding different types of content into our OneNote pages. And what we're going to take a look at now is how we can record and add to our notebooks audio and video files. Now, it might be at some stage when you're working in your notebooks that you want to maybe take a quick audio note or record a video. And the cool thing about this little feature in OneNote is that if you do record a piece of audio or a piece of video and insert it into your page, if you type any notes as you're recording your audio or video, the notes will essentially bookmark within the audio or video file, so you can easily find the place in the recording where you typed your note. So let me show you an example of both. So we're working up on the Insert tab, and you can see that I've just added a new page to the travel section called Recording Audio and Video. I'm going to click my mouse somewhere on this page, and then in the recording group, we're going to choose Record Audio. Now what this does is that as soon as you click on that button, it's automatically recording everything that you say. And you can see the audio files sitting there nicely in the OneNote notebook. Underneath, we have the time that the audio recording was started. And if you take a look up to the ribbons at the top, you can see I now have a contextual ribbon that's called Recording. And this contains all of the options I might need in order to manage this audio recording. So currently, because it is recording, I have a pause and a stop button. And you can see as I hover over those, they both have keyboard shortcuts. Now it might be that you are taking a recording of a meeting or maybe a lecture or something like that. And as you're recording, you might also be making notes. So let me show you how this works. So if I take some notes just here, so I'm going to type taking notes for audio recording. And if I was to type something else, so I'm just going to type in test, 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 test. I could carry on going. But now when I stop this recording, so I'm going to press stop on that contextual ribbon, I now have a couple of different ways that I can play this audio recording back. If I just want to play the whole thing, you can see if I hover over this file, I get a little play button next to it and I can click play. Now what this does is that as soon as you click on that button, it's automatically recording. But alternatively, what I could do is if I hover my mouse over my notes underneath, you'll see that each line of notes also has a little play button next to it. So this is essentially bookmarked in the recording where I was when I was taking this note. So what I can do is just click on play. So if I take some notes just here, and I could do the same for the line underneath. Recording. So it essentially keeps track of what was being said at the point that the note was written. Now this also works for video as well. So if we go back to the Insert tab and click on Record Video, this is going to pop open a window. Hi everybody, nice to see you. And it's going to allow you to take a recording in exactly the same way. So if I'm again working through this and typing in some notes, so I'm going to say typing notes for video recording. Again, that's bookmarking where I am in my recording when I typed that note. So now if I press stop on the contextual ribbon, I can choose to either play back the entire recording or just the part where I took the note. If I'm again working through this and typing in some notes, so I'm going to say typing, and it's as simple as that. Now you'll also notice that when these recordings start to play, some of these other buttons in the playback group become active, so you can do things like rewind for 10 minutes, rewind for 10 seconds, and also fast forward. And then right on the end here we have audio and video settings. So this is where you can customize how OneNote creates and plays audio and video recordings. And this is essentially going to jump you into your OneNote options, where you can set up things like your default audio recording device and also your video recording settings. So this is particularly helpful, I find, if I'm ever in a training course or there is something that someone is saying that I want to make sure I get correct. You can start a quick recording, record it all, and then you can type your own notes. That is it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. We're still in section 3, and in this section we've been looking at adding content, and it's now time to look at adding links into our notebooks. And this is a very simple process. Again, if you're used to using Microsoft applications, then you're not going to find this difficult at all because it's pretty similar to every other application. So occasionally you might need to add links to external websites or even links to other documents into your notebooks. So for example, I'm currently clicked on the Travel tab and I've created a page and I've called it Flights. So what I might want to have in here are some links to websites where you can book flights. And to do this, we're staying on the Insert tab And you'll see right in the middle, we have a group called links, and we only have one option in there. You can see as I hover over, it says create a link to web pages, files, or other places in your notes. And the keyboard shortcut to bring that up quickly is Control K. So let's click and see what we get. Now the first two links that I'm going to add are links to external websites. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can approach this. The first box that you have to fill out here is text to display. So I'm going to put in here Expedia. I now need to add in the link to that particular website. And you can see just to the right, I can choose to browse the web from here, or if I already have the website open, I can just jump across and copy and paste the link. So I'm just going to go to Microsoft Edge where I have a few different websites open. And the first one here is in fact Expedia. So all I'm going to do is click in the URL bar to highlight that web address, Control C to copy. I'm going to jump back to OneNote and Control V to paste it into the address field. I can then simply click OK and it adds in that link. Let's do another one, but in a slightly different way. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to go back up to link. This time I'm going to display a link to Skyscanner, but I'm going to use the browse the web option. So let's click. And this time it opens up the default page in my default web browser, which for this is Microsoft Edge. I can then simply navigate, so www.skyscanner.net. I can then copy the link, Control C, jump back to OneNote, and then paste that address in. So it's pretty much exactly the same, just a slightly different way of getting to your web browser. And now I've managed to add in another link. Now I'm just going to give these a little bit of a title. Recommended sites for booking flights, and then I have my two links to my web pages. And of course, if I hover over, I can see the URL. If I click, it's going to jump me to that particular web page. So all very straightforward and simple. Let's look at some other options that we have underneath link. Now what we can also do is we can choose a file to link to. So if I click Browse for File just here, I can navigate to where I have my file stored, and it's this one just here, flights.docx. Click on OK. I'm going to have the text to display as suggested flights and click on OK. So now essentially I've created a link to a document, and you'll see when I click, it's going to open that document up in Word. Now the final option that I have in here is I can link to other sections within my notebook. So you can see at the bottom here, I can expand the Project Artemis notebook. It's going to show me all my different sections, and I can choose any one of these sections to link through to. So I'm going to link to the overview section. The text to display is guide for flight dates. Click on OK, and that's exactly what I get. So if I now click, it's going to jump me to that particular section. So those are the different kinds of links that you can add into your notebooks. And of course, if you right click on any of these, you get a contextual menu, which is going to allow you to jump in and edit that link if you need to make any changes. You can also remove the link from here, select it, or copy it. And that is pretty much it. It is as simple as that. In the next module, we're going to explore how to add equations and symbols into our OneNote notebooks. So please join me for that. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. We're heading towards the end of section 3, and I just want to start to round out this section by running through a few other things that we haven't looked at yet, which you can insert into your OneNote notebooks. And what I'm going to go through in this module is inserting equations and symbols. Now, I will say when it comes to equations, this isn't particularly relevant for the notebook that I'm constructing, but you may find there are times where you need to insert some kind of mathematical equation into your notebooks. And fortunately, OneNote provides an equation editor to assist you with this. So let's take a look at some of the things that you can do. Now, again, I'm still working on the Insert tab. And if we go all the way across to the last group that's called symbols, you can see we have in there an equation button. And this is a two-part button, so I can click on the top half or I can click on the lower half. So let's click the lower half first of all. And what you'll find in here is a whole host of predefined equations that you can just click and insert into your notebook. So for example, if we take the top one just here, which works out the area of a circle, I can click and it's going to insert that equation into its own little placeholder in my notebook. And of course you can format this however you like using your tools on the home ribbon. Now when I insert this equation, another thing that you'll notice is that I then get the equation contextual ribbon. And remember, contextual ribbons are ribbons that only appear as and when they're needed. So from here you have lots of different options for manipulating this particular equation. You have a large symbols group in the middle, so if you need to change any of the symbols or add symbols, then you can definitely do that. And then in the structures group, there's all of these other different types of fractions that you can add in to your equation. Now remember, all of these buttons are for adding to the current equation that you have. You'll see if I was to click away, that equations ribbon disappears. So just be aware of that. You must be clicked in your equation in order to see this ribbon. But for example, if I was to press space just here, go up to structures and click the fractions drop down, I could choose this first option just here, which is a stacked fraction. If I click it, it's going to add that to my equation. And of course, then I can add numbers to this and customize it to my needs. Now, if I click away from this equation to get rid of that equations ribbon, what I could also do is jump back to my Insert tab, and I could create my own equation from scratch. Now, there's a couple of different ways I can do this. If I click the lower half of the equation drop down, you'll see right at the bottom, I have an Insert New Equation button. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Alt plus equals. Alternatively, and a much quicker way of doing this, is to click the top half of the button, which then just gives me essentially a blank placeholder, and I can construct my own equation from here. And you'll see once again, I get my equation ribbon back again, and I can go in and choose whatever equation it is that I want to add in. And everything within these equations can be modified simply by clicking in the placeholder and replacing the characters or the operators. Now, if you are somebody who is using a touchscreen device, then you also have a few extra options. So once again, let's jump up to Insert, and I'm going to insert a blank equation. So if you have some kind of stylus that you use with your touchscreen device, what you can do is handwrite out your equation, and then OneNote will do its best to convert it to text for you. So in this first group here, the Tools group, we have a button called Ink Equation. And it says Insert Mathematical Equations using your handwriting. So let's jump into here. And we get our Insert Ink Equation box. And what I can do is I can now write my equation using my stylus and get OneNote to convert it for me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this box out to make it a bit bigger, and I'm going to use my stylus, because I am using a touchscreen device, to write out my equation. And let's just use Einstein's most famous equation, E equals mc squared. So I'm going to do my best to write this out. But there we go, and you can see just above it's giving me a preview of what it thinks I've written, and in this case that looks to be correct. Now if I need to make a correction when I'm writing this out, you can see at the bottom we have some options for manipulating our handwriting. So I could choose Select and Correct, and then I can draw around whatever it is that I want to correct. And OneNote's going to provide me a few different options that it thinks I might want to do from this little menu. Now in this case I don't want to correct it, I'm just going to click on Close, and I can also erase any of my handwriting as well. So if I click on Erase, once again I can just drag it over whatever it is I want to get rid of. And of course if I want to clear the whole lot and just start again, then I have a Clear button down here. Now I'm going to go back into write mode and just add that 2 back in, like so. And I'm fairly happy with that, so I'm going to insert it into my page, and there we go, we have our little equation. So that's particularly good if you have a very bespoke long equation that you want to add in. Instead of going through all of these different structures and symbols, you can simply open up the Ink equation editor, write it down, and then OneNote will do its best to convert it, and you can make any corrections that you need to make. So equations, probably not something you'll use all that frequently, but just know that it's there and you can use it if you need to. Finally, let's jump back up to Insert and quickly look at symbols. Now again, this is fairly straightforward. This will just allow you to insert any symbols into your OneNote pages. And you can see there I have a selection of a few that I've used most recently. And if I want to see the full list of symbols, I can just say More Symbols, and it's going to bring up that full list. And I'm going to insert one of these symbols. Now let's just move that window out of the way, because I'm going to go to the Offices section. I'm going to select the London office, and you can see here I have the office address. So what I'm going to do is just click at the start of office address and just add in a little symbol. I'm going to add this little envelope one. So I'm going to click, Insert, Close, and I might want to put a little bit of space in there. So it just adds a little bit more interest into my OneNote page. So don't forget that you have a whole host of different symbols that you can use in your pages as well. Again, this is a feature that's available across all of the other Microsoft applications. So that's it for this module. Very straightforward, equations and symbols. Use them when you need to. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, welcome back to the course. We're down into the last module of section 3, and in this section we've been seeing how we can add all different types of content into our OneNote notebooks. So I'm just going to finish up this section by running through the options that you have when it comes to copying and pasting content from other documents into your notebook. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is create a new page. So I'm going to jump into my courses group. I'm going to click the plus to create a new section, and we're going to rename this one OneNote and hit enter. And this page is going to be called Training Script. And what I want to do is I want to take the training script, what I'm going to say in this particular course, from a Word document and paste it into this page in OneNote. Now this is fairly straightforward. If you're used to copying and pasting things across different Microsoft applications, you're probably not going to have too many worries. But let's run through it because there are a couple of things when it comes to pasting that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to jump across to a Word document, and all you need to do is make your selection. So select the text that you want to copy and paste. So I'm going to say I want these first few paragraphs, and then of course you need to copy it. And you can use whatever method you want to use in order to copy this text. So that might be Control-C if you like your keyboard shortcuts. Alternatively, up on the home ribbon, you have a copy button, or you could right-click your mouse and select copy from the little contextual menu. So let's click copy and jump back to OneNote. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this text in. Now you'll find your paste options on the Home tab in this first clipboard group. Now again, this is a dual button, so it's split into a top half and a lower half. Now if you click the top half of this button, it's exactly the same as doing a Control-V to paste. And what OneNote will do is it will use your default paste option in order to paste that text in. Now, if you're wondering what your default paste option is, if you click the lower half of the paste button, whatever icon you have showing first is going to be your default paste option. So for me, that is to keep the source formatting. So what that means is if I just do Control-V, it's basically going to retain all formatting from the source document. So if I have my font formatted in Times New Roman in the source document, if I was to choose keep source formatting when I paste, it's still going to be in Times New Roman in OneNote. Now, of course, I have a few other options in here. I could choose to merge formatting. So that means whatever my default fonts are in OneNote, when I paste text in from another document, it's going to take on the formatting that's set in OneNote. The third option I have is to keep text only, so that's going to bring across unformatted text and you can do whatever you like with it, or I could choose to insert the text as a picture. Now I'm just going to do that just to show you the difference with this option. Let's select picture. And what you'll see is that within the placeholder, if I click, I now get these handles around the outside. So OneNote is treating this as a picture, which means I can't just jump into this text and edit it. So just bear that in mind if you decide to use that option. Now I'm going to Control Z just to undo that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Keep Source Formatting. Paste that in, and there we go. And you can see with this option, I can jump in and I can make any changes I need to this text. And what you'll also see at the bottom is that I have a link back to the original document if I need to refer to it at any stage. So that was copying and pasting text from a Word document into OneNote. Let's run through one more example of copying and pasting something from Excel into OneNote. So I'm going to go back a level. And I'm just going to jump to where it says schedule and click somewhere down here. Now, if I go to Excel, you can see I have an Excel worksheet here that has the course plan table on it. So what I could do is select this entire table. I can click on copy, jump back across to OneNote, and then once again, I have my different paste options. So this time I'm going to select merge formatting to pull that through, and it's going to take on the default formatting that I have in this OneNote notebook. If I Control Z just to undo that and do it once more, but this time I'm going to say keep source formatting, you can see I get something slightly different because it's bringing across the formatting from the original source document. So the main takeaway from this lesson is just be aware of those different paste options that you have and how they can affect the look and feel of the content that you're pasting in. That's it for this module. That is it for this section. In the next section, section 4, we're going to move into taking a deeper look at formatting our notes. So I'm excited. Grab yourselves a coffee and I will see you over there. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. It's time for us to take a look at some of the options that we've run through in this section in OneNote for Windows 10. So we are pretty much picking up from where we left off in the last Windows 10 tutorial. And if you remember, we created a project called Project Sierra. We created some sections and some pages, and then I showed you how you can make subpages. And we also took a look at the main options that we have in the OneNote for Windows 10 interface. So let's move on a little bit now and start taking a look at how we can insert items into our pages. Now this is fairly straightforward in OneNote for Windows 10. All of your insert options are found on the Insert tab. And from here you can insert various different items like tables, files, printouts, pictures, and online video, as well as things like links and audio, meeting details, symbols, so on and so forth. So fairly similar in that way to the desktop version. Now when it comes to typing notes, this works in exactly the same way. You just click somewhere in your page and type your note. And you'll see that the note appears in a very similar placeholder that you can pick up and move around. You can also resize it by dragging it out to give yourself a little bit more room, and you can pretty much place this wherever you want on your page. Now when it comes to formatting text that you have within placeholders, if you jump back to the Home tab, this is where you're going to find all of your formatting options that you have available. So I can make this bold, I can make it italic, I can highlight it, I can even do things like copy the formatting using Format Painter, or add things like bullet points and numbered items. Now I'm going to do undo a couple of times just to take that back to the plain text, because what I want to focus on in this particular lesson is things that you can insert into your notebook. So let's jump back to the Insert tab and let's start out by taking a look at how we can insert a table. So I'm going to click the table button, and again this is probably fairly similar to what you're used to. I'm going to select how big I want my table, and very quickly I've managed to insert a nice table into here, and I can now start to add in my required data. Now I'm going to select that placeholder and just delete that out and just show you a couple of other options that you have on this ribbon, because most of them are pretty much the same as the desktop version. So let's click on File And I'll just show an example of inserting a file into your notebook. So I'm going to select this Word document just here and click on Open. And I can choose to upload it to OneDrive and insert a link to it. I can insert it as an attachment or as a printout. So I'm going to say Insert Attachment, and just like that, we have that document sitting there ready to open. We can insert pictures in pretty much the same way. We can choose to insert a picture that we have saved off. We can choose to select one from a camera or from an online source. So if I was to select from online, it's going to open up a pane where I can then search for a particular picture. So let's just say London. I can then choose the picture that I want, and it's going to insert that very quickly into my notebook. Now, once again, I'm going to click on Undo to get rid of that. Now, when it comes to something like online video, again, this is where you're going to need to know the exact URL of the video that you want to insert. So you might have to jump onto YouTube or Vimeo, grab the URL, paste it in here in order to put your video into your notebook. Now, pretty much everything else in this section is exactly the same in the desktop version as in this one. When it comes to copying and pasting, you can utilize exactly the same keyboard shortcuts. So for example, if I press Ctrl+C to copy, click down here and Ctrl+V to paste, that's going to work nicely. Now, if you're looking for your cut, copy and paste options on that Home tab, you're going to need to click on the clipboard, and then you'll see a drop-down menu with those three available in there. So when it comes to inserting items into this particular version of OneNote, fairly straightforward. Insert tab, there you have your options, and for the most part it works pretty much the same as the desktop version. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi everyone, welcome back to the course. This is still Deb, and we are down into section 4 where we're going to be taking a deeper look at formatting notes. Now, formatting is reasonably simple, but it's a very important process because it makes your text more readable. It allows you to emphasize certain points and also gives a bit more structure to content that you have on your page. And I've been utilizing font formatting throughout this course so far. But in this particular module, I just want to delve into all of the options that you have so that you're clear and can format your notes effectively. So I'm currently clicked on the OneNote section in the training script, and you can see here currently I have a few paragraphs of completely unformatted text. Now I can see in here I have some spelling errors that I might want to correct, and I'll do that later. But for now, I want to give this a bit more structure, make it a little bit more interesting by formatting my paragraphs. Now in OneNote, you can choose to format everything that you have on your page, or you can select specific paragraphs to format. So let me show you examples of both. Now, if I click on my text, you can see that I have this placeholder around the outside. Now, if I select that placeholder, I'm effectively selecting everything contained within the placeholder. So any formatting that I apply at this point is going to apply to everything within the placeholder. What you'll also see is that as soon as I clicked on that placeholder, I get my mini toolbar just above. And the mini toolbar holds lots of different formatting options to make it a bit more convenient when it comes to formatting. Now currently I'm clicked on the home ribbon where I have all of my formatting options, but it might be that I'm clicked on a different ribbon and I want to format some text. So instead of having to jump back to home to get to those formatting options, the mini toolbar gives me quick access to them wherever I am. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to change my font style. So currently I have this set to Calibri, and if I click the drop down, this is going to give me a list of all of the inbuilt fonts within OneNote. You'll see at the top I have my most recently used fonts, and then I have a list of all of the fonts within OneNote in alphabetical order, which makes them a little bit easier to find. Now, if you know the particular font that you want to use, you can scroll through the list and look for it, or alternatively, you can just start typing the name of that font and it will jump you to the correct place in that list. So for me, I'm going to use Lato Light. And you can see as I type it, it's found that in the list. It's the last one just here. If I click it, it's going to apply that font to everything I have within that placeholder. Now currently I have a little title here called What to Expect from This Course, and it doesn't really stand out from the rest of the text. So what I could do is just select that line of text as opposed to the entire placeholder, jump up to my font drop down, and this one I'm going to select Lato again, but this time I'm going to choose Lato Black. So what I'm doing here, and this is quite important, is I'm sticking within the same font family. I've used Lato Light for my paragraphs, and I'm using Lato Black for my heading. And this ensures that my fonts aren't going to look too different to each other as they're within the same family. It just gives a more consistent overall look and feel. Now, something else I might want to do here is I might want to select that heading again and increase the font size. So once again, from the drop-down menu, currently I've got 11-point font selected, but I could choose something that's a little bit bigger just to make that heading stand out a little bit more. Now, underneath those two options, we have some additional ways of styling up our text. We can make text bold, and you can see the keyboard shortcut there, Control B, italic, we can underline, we can add a strike through to cross something out, and then we have a choice of subscript or superscript. So for example, if you typed the word H2O, you could use superscript to make that look correct. So let's just apply some of these options. I'm going to take let's just take this first sentence in the second paragraph. I can make it bold. I can make it italic. I can underline it. I could strike through. And if I type in H2O, what I could do is select the number 2, jump up to my superscript and subscript button and make it superscript so that looks a little bit more accurate. Now, I don't actually want all of this formatting applied, so I'm going to delete out the word H2O. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this whole sentence again. And if we go up to our basic text group, you can see here I have a clear all formatting button. Keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-N. And you can see it says it removes all formatting from the selection, leaving only the normal unformatted text. So when I click this, it's going to remove absolutely everything, including the font style that I selected. Now in this case, it's a little bit quicker for me to use this button and then just go back in and reselect Lato Light to apply that font. But in some cases, it might be quicker for you just to highlight the sentence and undo all of the formatting that you applied. Now, a couple of other options in this second group that we have here, we have a text highlighter. And I showed you how to use this before. It's a really nice little option if you want to highlight or make something stand out in your bulk of text. So let me take this sentence here where I'm introducing myself. And if I go up to highlighter, click the drop down, I have a choice of different highlight colors. So let's highlight this in a bright green, and there we go. And once again, if I wanted to remove that, I can select the text, and I can go back into here and choose no color, or I could clear the formatting. But remember, it's going to clear that font style as well and take it back to your default. And then of course, if we highlight this first paragraph, I can change the font color. And I have a selection of theme colors to choose from, and then a selection of standard colors. Now, if I'm not finding the color that I want in this palette, I could click on more colors and I can choose from a standard color selection, or I can go to custom and get super granular about the color that I'm choosing. So I can move around this color palette, and let's go for a purple. I'm going to go for a lighter purple, and you can see in the bottom corner, it's showing me what that color is going to look like. Click on OK, and then it's going to apply that to whatever paragraph I have selected. Now I'm going to Control Z just to put that back to black. Now the final few options that we have in here are the increase and decrease indent. So once again, if I wanted these first two paragraphs to be slightly indented from the rest of the text, I could select them and choose to increase my indent position. And it's going to indent those. And if I want to do the opposite, again, I can select and I can choose to decrease my indent position to move that back again. Then finally underneath, I have some alignment options. So currently my text is all aligned to the left. Now for this, I'm actually going to select the entire placeholder and I'm going to say align to center. And you can see I get a completely different layout for my text. I could also choose to align to the right, And that's sometimes useful if you want to move your text box over to here. It gives it a different look and feel. Now again, I'm going to Control Z just to pull that back to align left. And then right at the bottom, we have some paragraph spacing options. So currently you can see the spacing in between my paragraphs is reasonably small. So it might be that I want to increase that to make it a bit more obvious and prominent. So if I go down to paragraph spacing options, I can choose how much space I want to set before the paragraph and how much space after. And I'm going to say I want 20-point spacing afterwards. Click on OK, and you can see I get a much wider gap after each paragraph. And the final button that we have in this little basic text formatting group is the Delete Item button. So this is just another way of being able to very quickly select a paragraph. So if I hover over this second paragraph, you'll see I get a little arrow at the side. I can click it to select the paragraph. I can click Delete, and it's pretty much the same as pressing the Delete key on your keyboard. So that is it, a very quick run through of all of those font formatting options that you have available. In the next module, I'm going to show you how you can utilize Format Painter. So please join me for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. We're down in section 4 where we're taking a look at formatting. And in the previous module, I showed you the different options that you have when it comes to formatting paragraphs of text in your notebooks. Now, in this particular module, we're going to follow on from the previous one, and I'm going to introduce you to the Format Painter. Now, again, this is something that I use towards the beginning of this course, but I want to make sure that you understand exactly how to use it because there are a couple of things that aren't immediately obvious. So once again, I am working in the training script page, and I've added a bit more text into this page. Now, if you take a look at the text that I've actually added, I have some times 10 to 12 and also 2 to 4 a bit further down, and I want to make those stand out from the rest of the text on the page. So once again, what I can do is I can hover my mouse over the little arrow that appears in the margin and click to select that piece of text. Now, if I want to select another piece of text, I can hold down my Control key, click to select that line as well. And I'm going to make both of these bold, like so. And then underneath I have a list of items that I'm going to cover. And then underneath each of these headings, I have essentially a list of agenda items. So again, what I might want to do here is apply some formatting to make them stand out and give this notebook a little bit of structure. So the most obvious thing I might want to do with some kind of list would be to either add bullets or numbering. And if we jump back up to our basic text options, you can see I have a whole host of different symbols that I can use as bullets. So I'm going to pick this little tiny black square, click to add that in. Now, an alternative option to adding in just symbols as bullets is that you can number items as well. So if I go up to the button next to bullets, we have a numbering option. And this is going to pull up the numbering library, and it shows me all the different styles of numbering that I could choose. So again, it really depends on what your personal preference is or what matches the overall theme of the notebook that you're working in. So for this one, I'm actually going to choose these Roman numerals, click to add those in. And when it comes to things like numbering, you'll notice that if I click on one of the numbered items, it selects them all. So if I wanted to change to a different style of numbering, I can just jump back up to numbering and then choose whatever it is that I need to. Now, the final thing I want to show you in this lesson is how to utilize the Format Painter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Enter, and you'll see that automatically it's going to give me my next numbered item. Now, I don't want to have a numbered item here. I want to create a new heading. So all I need to do is I can just click on numbering, but you'll see that it's going to leave my cursor indented. So if I want to pull it back so it's flush with that left-hand margin, this is where I would use my decrease indent position. And when I click that, it pulls it back to where I need it to be. So I'm going to add another heading in here. We're going to say 4 to 6. And I'm going to add in a few more items. Now, a quick way of me formatting this new list the same as the list that I have above is to utilize the Format Painter. And what the Format Painter does, it allows you to select a piece of text that already contains formatting and then essentially transfer it to another piece of text. So in this example, I want this heading 4 to 6 to look exactly the same as the one just above, 2 to 4. Now in practice, this just contains bold formatting, so it's not too much of a hassle for me to just apply bold. But if I had multiple pieces of formatting applied, so if I select it and maybe if I change the color, maybe I've gone in and I've made it bigger, maybe I've made it italic, I've now applied a number of different steps. And so to recreate those manually for this particular title is going to be a little bit time consuming. A much quicker way of doing it would be just to select the text that contains the formatting you want to copy, and in the clipboard group, click on the Format Painter, and you can see the keyboard shortcut there is Control-Shift-C. Now I'm going to click the Format Painter once, and you'll see that my cursor changes to a paintbrush, and now all I need to do is paint over and let go, and it's going to copy that formatting across. Now one thing you'll also notice is that as soon as I've done that, my cursor returns to just that standard cursor. So what do I need to do if I want to carry on painting this format? So we're going to do the same again, but this time I'm going to copy the formatting to multiple items. So it's the same process. I'm going to select the text, but this time I'm going to double click on the Format Painter. I can then paint over this heading, scroll up, and paint over this heading. And you can see that my cursor is still showing in paint mode. So if you click on Format Painter once, you only get to paint once. If you have a lot of painting or copying of formatting that you want to do, you need to double click on that Format Painter. Once you're done with your formatting, you can just click on Format Painter to turn it off, or alternatively, you can press the Escape key on your keyboard and that will take you back to your regular cursor. So Format Painter is a great way of working a little bit more efficiently, saving time, and also ensuring that your formatting is consistent throughout your notebook. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. In this section, we're taking a look at everything to do with formatting notes to give our notebook structure and make it easier for the reader to decipher exactly what they're looking at. And in the previous module, I showed you how you can utilize bullets and numbering and also use that Format Painter to copy formatting to other pieces of content. I'm just going to start out by finishing that up. So, if you remember, right at the end of the last lesson, I added in another list of items. And currently these don't have any bullets or numbering applied to them like the previous two sections. And I want everything in here to be consistent. I want everything to have bullets applied as opposed to numbering. So once again, I'm going to select the text that contains the formatting I want to reuse. And I'm going to double click on my Format Painter. And I'm going to paint over the list below. And then I'm going to paint over the final list. And then I'm going to click on Format Painter to come back to my regular cursor. So now everything's starting to look a little bit more uniform. And this is a really important point when you're working in any application, not just OneNote. Making everything look consistent is really important when it comes to the readability of the document that you're creating. And something that can help you with that is styles. And you'll see on the home ribbon in the middle, we have a styles drop down. And again, this is something we took a look at very briefly in one of the earlier modules, but let's just delve into it a little bit deeper so you understand exactly why these can be useful. Now, styles are essentially pre-formatted pieces of text, which are available as standard in OneNote. And you can see from this drop down, you get a little preview as to what each of these will look like when you apply them to any piece of content in your notebook. And the idea of these is to give your document consistency and also structure. And it also makes it a lot easier for you to very quickly apply formatting without having to manually apply it from your basic text formatting options. So let's take a look at how we might use these. Now at the top here, I have the heading, What to Expect from this course. And I just applied manual formatting to this. I changed the font style. I increased the font size to 14, and I also made it bold. So that's essentially 3 clicks to get the result that I want. What I could have done instead was select this heading, go to Styles and select Heading 1. And that's going to apply that Heading 1 style and all of the formatting to that heading. And if whenever I have a heading in my notebook, I consistently use Heading 1, that's going to make my document look a lot more tied together. And it also saves me a lot of time because it just requires 1 click. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a subheading here called Agenda. I'm going to select it and I'm going to give this a heading 2. I'm then going to select 10 to 12 and I'm going to give this a heading 3. So you can see that each of these headings as I'm applying them are slightly different from the previous one, but they still give a cohesive look. So let's apply heading 3 to this one as well, and also heading 3 down here. Now, of course, I could carry on going, and it really depends how many subheadings I have in my document, but I can utilize all of these throughout to give a consistent feel. You'll also see that I have some other styles available in here, which I could also use. So if I have a page title, I might decide to apply this particular style. If I have a citation or maybe a quote, and what you'll see is if I just show you, if I select this paragraph, maybe this is a quote and I want to emphasize that, I could use the quote style. And when I click in it, you can see the formatting that it's applied for this style. So it's Calibri font, it's size 11, it's italic, and if I click the font color drop down, you can see the font color that it's using highlighted in the theme colors palette. So I can see all of the individual properties that essentially make up that quote style. Now I'm going to Control Z because I don't need that to be a quote. Now I'm going to leave you to have a little play around with these, see which ones you like, which ones you don't, but they are a super quick way of just applying some kind of structure to your document. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. In this section we've been taking a look at some of the options that we have when it comes to formatting our text notes, and I want to move on from that a little bit in this module and run through some options that you have when it comes to organizing information on your page. And we're going to start by taking a look at tables. Now, once again, we're going to be working predominantly on the Insert ribbon, as that is where we will find Add Tables option in the second group just here. Now, again, if you've worked in other Microsoft applications, such as Word or maybe Excel, you may be pretty familiar with the concept of tables. Now, if you are used to using tables in those applications, then you might find the option in OneNote a little bit limited. There's definitely not as much that you can do with a table in OneNote compared to something like Word. But nevertheless, it can still be super useful for organizing text, making things easier to read, and also lining up items on a page. So in this module, I'm going to show you how you can insert a table, and we're going to run through the formatting options that you do have. So I'm clicked on the training script page, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in a table which is essentially going to replace these bulleted items. So currently, the way I have this laid out, these bulleted items take up quite a bit of room. So I've decided that these would look a little bit better if I organize them in a table. So I'm going to click after the word agenda and hit my enter key to put me onto a blank line. I'm going to jump up to table, and at this point I have a couple of different options. I can select how many columns and rows I want in my table simply by dragging over the grid. Alternatively, I can click on Insert Table and manually type in the number of columns and the number of rows. Now for me, I always find it a little bit easier just to drag over the grid. So I'm going to create a table that is 7 rows by 3 columns. Click to insert. And what you'll see is you get this rather small kind of cramped up table. Now, of course, this is a little bit small for me to be able to work with effectively. So the first thing I want to do here is resize these columns. And it's a simple case of hovering your mouse over the column boundaries until you get that double-sided arrow and just dragging out to the size that you want. And of course, you can adjust these later if you don't have it quite right at the outset. So let's make this table a little bit bigger, like so. Now, one thing that you'll notice again is that when I'm clicked inside this table, if you cast your eyes up to the ribbons, you can see that I now have a contextual ribbon called Table. And this ribbon contains all of the options that I have in relation to formatting and organizing this table. So I have a select group, first of all, that will allow me to select the entire table. I can select specific columns, so wherever I'm clicked, it's going to highlight. Again, I can select specific rows, or I can just select a specific cell. And all of these selection options are really dependent on where you're clicked within your table. Now, of course, when it comes to selecting, you can also utilize this little grey arrow in the margin. If I want to select the first row, I can click the grey arrow to select it. And if I hover just above the table, you'll see that I get that black downward facing arrow, which is going to allow me to select different columns. I can, of course, drag my mouse. So if I want to select a few different rows, I can definitely do it that way. Or maybe if I want to select a few cells within one column, I can do it that way as well. So a few different options there when it comes to making selections. The next group along is deleting, so we can delete our entire table. We can delete specific columns that we've selected or specific rows. And then we have an insert group. And this is going to allow us to insert additional rows either above or below where we're clicked, or additional columns to the left or to the right of where we're clicked. We then have a group that contains some formatting options. So if I want to hide all the borders of a table, I can do that, and that will look a little bit more useful when we actually have some content within the table. I can also choose shading. So if I want to change the background fill of some of the rows or maybe a specific cell or column, then I can definitely do that. And then I have alignment options, and this relates to the text contained within each cell. I can choose to align it to the left, to the center, or to the right. Now we have a couple of other options on the end here, which I'm going to cover at the end of this module. Let's just focus on the ones that we've just run through. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to add some content in. And in this first cell, I want to have the text 10 to 12. So I'm going to select that text and I'm going to do Control X, which will cut. Alternatively, you could have used the cut command on the home ribbon, or you could right click and select cut from there. I'm going to click in this first cell just here and I'm going to press Control V to paste that in. And you'll see that it's pasted with all of its original formatting because I used Control V, which essentially invokes my default paste option, which is to keep the source formatting. Now underneath here, I'm going to type in agenda item. We're going to have description, and then I'm going to have time. Now, one thing you might notice is that the font style has gone back to Calibri because Calibri is my overall default font. It's not picking up the Lato Light that I changed everything in this notebook to be. So probably what I'm going to want to do here is select the entire table. And to do that, again, I can jump up to the table ribbon. And in the first group, I can click Select Table. And then I'm going to go to home and I'm going to change all of the font to Lato Light. So that now ensures that everything that I'm going to type into this table is going to have the correct font style. Now, another thing I'm going to do here with these column headings is I'm going to select the entire row and I'm going to make them bold. And now I'm going to take these bulleted items and I'm going to cut and paste into the table. So let's select the first one, Control X to cut, Control V to paste, and I'm going to do exactly the same for all of the others. Like so. Now you can see because I've just done a direct cut and paste, it's brought across those bullets as well. Now it might be that once you put them in the table, you don't have any need for the bullets. So all you need to do to get rid of those is select all of the bulleted text, jump up to the home ribbon and just deselect bullets to put those back. Now, when I talk about tables in OneNote being slightly less functional than in other applications, I mean for things like this. So for example, this first row where we have the times, if I was working in a table in, say, Word, what I would probably do here would be to merge all of these cells. So we just have essentially one cell running across the top. But you'll notice if we go to the table ribbon, we don't have any merge options. So you kind of have to keep it in this format. What I'm going to do now is just go in and type in some text into the description fields. So there we go. I've added in a brief description for each of these agenda items and also the time that each item is going to start. Now it might be that I want to add another column that contains the room that this course is taking place in. So what I might want to do here is, first of all, I'm going to drag this table border in as I don't need as much space here. I'm going to select this last column and I'm going to say insert right to insert another column. Now you'll see as soon as I do that, OneNote is going to resize my table to accommodate the widest item in that column. Now normally this is fine, but if you want to widen, then you're going to have to go in and manually widen these columns again. So I'm going to say room, and we'll say room A, room B, C, D, and E. Now some other things I can do in here to liven up my table. If I click in this heading row, I can jump up to my select group and say select rows. And just to make this stand out a bit, I'm going to apply some shading. So let's apply some lilac shading to that heading row. I'm also going to click where we have the times. I'm going to say select cell. And for this, I'm going to apply bold formatting. And then I'm going to select the time column. So all of these items just here, just by clicking and dragging my mouse. And I'm going to make these italic. Now something else I also could do is hide these table borders. So if I jump up to the format group, I have a hide borders option, which is just going to give me that. So essentially it is still in a table and you can resize still by dragging, but you're just not seeing those table boundaries. So sometimes that does tend to look a little bit neater and a bit more professional. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to bring those borders back. And remember, I can highlight 2 columns of content, and maybe I want to center align those 2. Now, another option I have up here is the sort option. So I can choose to sort the items in my table in ascending order, so A to Z, or descending Z to A. And this is really important. Here it's got a tick next to header row. Now my table's a little bit different to most tables that you might create because my first row isn't actually my heading row. Really, where I have these column headings, that essentially is my heading row. So for me, if I wanted to sort in ascending order and I have header row ticked, OneNote is going to think that the first row is my header row. And so when I sort, it's going to look a little bit strange. So for me, I can't actually do that. If I just want to sort the items, so maybe I want to sort these agenda items into alphabetical order, I would need to select them, go up to sort and say sort selected rows. I'm going to sort by column 1 in ascending order. Click on OK, and now you can see that that has worked. So just be aware of that header row option. Now, essentially what I want here is this table for each of these different parts of the training course. Now, what I find is the easiest way is just to copy this particular table. I want everything to look pretty much the same. So I'm going to click in my table, up to my table tools, select table. I'm then going to go to the home ribbon and say copy, or Control C if you want. I'm then going to place my cursor where I want the new table to be, and I can do Control V to paste that in. So once I've done that, I have all my formatting, everything that I need, and all I would have to do is go through and replace the items in the table. So once again, I could do a Control X, but this time I'm going to say paste and merge formatting to take on the formatting of the table. Let's do a couple more. I'm going to select Control X. I'm going to do paste and merge formatting. And I'm going to carry on going through, repeating this process for the rest of these agenda items. So this now looks a lot more interesting and also a lot neater and more organized now that I'm using tables. I'm just going to make a few further changes to these tables. So I'm going to click in the second table in that second row. I'm going to go up to the select group and select the row. And I'm going to change the shading to green. I'm going to do the same thing for the final table, select the row, and let's change the shading to a yellow color. And one thing you'll notice is that with this table at the bottom, we don't have quite as hefty a schedule in the last part of the day. And so I have a blank row at the bottom here that needs to be deleted. And again, this is a simple process. You can either click in the margin to select the row, alternatively click on the Select Rows button, and then you can utilize your delete options. So I'm going to say delete rows just to remove that. And then finally at the top here, we have an option to convert to an Excel spreadsheet. So what I could do is I could click in this table. I'm going to say select table and click convert to Excel spreadsheet. And you can see what I get now. I'm now working within essentially a mini Excel window. And if I click on the edit button, it's going to open that up in Excel, which then of course widens what I can do with this data because I have all of Excel's functionality to hand. So it might be at this point that I choose to merge these cells. So I'm going to say merge cells, like so. Click on save, and when I close the Excel spreadsheet back down again, you can see that those cells are now merged. So it gives the table a bit of a different look and feel, and it really depends what you want to do. But this is a great way of having a table in OneNote, but having access to Excel functionality. So lots of options you have in there for organizing your data with tables. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to the course. In this module, I want to start to introduce you to the concept of tagging in OneNote. And we're going to start out with the most basic tag that you can add and probably one that you'll use most often. And that is the to-do item tag. Now the to-do item is great if you want to create like a to-do checklist. So for example, for this project, Project Artemis, there are lots and lots of different tasks that need to occur before this project can go ahead. Anything from organizing which team members are going to be sent to the different locations, to booking the training rooms, organizing flights and hotels, writing the training content, all of those different kinds of things. So in its most basic form, what you can do in OneNote is you can add a list of items or to-do items, utilize the to-do tag, and then check them off once they're done. So let's take a look at how this works. So I've created a new section called To-Do List, and I've called this page To-Do Items. I'm going to click my mouse right at the top there, and on the home ribbon in this tags group, you'll see that I have a To-Do tag. Now what you also might notice is that To-Do also appears at the top of this tags list, and that's because it's probably one of the most popular ones you're going to use. Now there is a keyboard shortcut to insert this particular tag of Ctrl+1. And we haven't covered tags yet. You can see we have a lot of items in this big long list. We are going to go through some of these so you understand what they all do and how helpful they can be. For the time being, we're just going to concentrate on this first one. So let's click on To Do, and you'll see that it enters in a placeholder with a little checkbox. And I can then type in my to-do item. So assign team members to locations. If I hit the enter key, you can see I get another to-do box. Hit enter again, I get another one, so on and so forth. And I could carry on going, adding my different to-do items. And that's pretty much all it is. It's a very simple little utility, but it just allows you to keep track of the things that you need to do. And once they're done, you can just click in the box to tick those off. Now you can make some very minimal modifications to how these to-do boxes look. So if I right click my mouse, you can see I have options to uncheck the box. I can also remove the tag entirely. I'm going to talk to you about find tags a bit later on, but the one I want to go into is customize tags. So I'm going to select the to-do tag at the top and I'm going to say modify tag. So if I wanted to, I could change the display name of this particular tag. But I can also do things like change the symbol, the font color, and the highlight color. So you have some limited customization options. So for example, if I click the symbol drop down, you can see I can change to any of these symbols. Now, I actually like having a checkbox, but it might be that I want something that looks a little bit different, maybe this green star checkbox. And you can see in the preview below what that's going to look like. It might be that I want to change the font color, so let's change that to a dark green color. And if I wanted to, I could add a highlight. Now, I don't particularly want that. I'm going to say none. And one important thing to note is it says underneath, customizations do not affect notes you've already tagged. So if I click on OK and OK again, you can see that the checkboxes I've already added aren't affected, so I'm not getting that updated formatting. But if I was to click somewhere else and then select To Do from tags, I'm going to get that new style. But of course, if I did have quite a long to-do list and I wanted to change the formatting, I could just select the current tags, jump up to my tags group and click the newly formatted to-do tag. And that's going to replace all of those. Now there's a whole heap of other things that you can do with tags, including the to-do tag, which I'm going to show you a bit later on because we have a whole module dedicated to exploring all of the tags that you can see in here and using them in a meaningful way. But for now, that's how you create a very simple to-do list with checkboxes. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. We're heading steadily towards the end of section 4. In this section, we've been taking a look at formatting tools and how you can organize your information within OneNote effectively. And no section on formatting would be complete if I didn't run you through the options you have when it comes to spell checking. Nothing makes a document or a notebook look unprofessional quite like misspelt words. Particularly if you're going to be sharing this notebook with your team colleagues or maybe even a manager, you want to make sure that every time you create a page, you do run through a spell check. Now I want to start out just by taking you into the backstage area, just so you can see where all of your spelling options are, because that's really going to determine how you spell check your notebook. So let's go up to File, and we're going to go all the way down into our OneNote options. And the section that we're interested in is the proofing section. Now I would advise you to jump into here and just review the options that you have turned on, but the thing I want to draw your attention to is this section at the bottom. So underneath here you can see that I have selected to check my spelling as I type. And I've also got check grammar with spelling as well. So what that basically means is that as I'm typing my notes in OneNote, OneNote is checking to make sure I've spelt words correctly. And if I do spell something incorrectly, it's going to indicate that, and I have an option to correct it as I go. The same thing applies with grammar because I have this option selected as well. Now, some people don't like their applications checking their spelling as they go. They'd rather just wait until the end and then spell check the entire thing. And that's entirely up to you. If you do want to turn off that option, make sure you select Hide Spelling and Grammar Errors. Now I'm happy with mine set as they are. I'm going to click on OK and just show you what I mean. So if I was to type a word, let's spell something incorrect, I'm going to say Microsoft instead of Microsoft. And you can see automatically OneNote has recognized I've spelt that wrong and I have a red squiggly underline. So if I right click my mouse, you can see straight at the top it's going to give me some suggestions of what I might have been trying to say. And in this case it's picked up that I probably wanted to say Microsoft, so I can click to make that correction. I can choose to ignore, or I can choose to add it to a dictionary. Now the Add to Dictionary option is really useful, particularly for things like names. So OneNote won't necessarily recognize your manager's name, and so might think that that's an error when you type it into the page. And if you're always typing your manager's name, it is a bit annoying to have to go in and ignore the error each time. So what you could do is add the word to the dictionary instead, so that the next time you type it, OneNote knows that that's an actual word and it doesn't highlight it as an error. But in this case, I'm going to select Microsoft, and you can see it updates that word. So I'm going to double click to delete that out because I don't need it, but hopefully you get the idea. So if you want to check your spelling and your grammar as you go, just make sure you turn on those two little options. Now the alternative thing that you can do is you can spell check each of your pages at the end. So if I jump up to the Review tab, you can see I have a spelling group here and the first option is spelling. So let's click that button. And you can see it's telling me straight away the spelling check is complete. So essentially I've been pretty good here. I haven't got a misspelt word or a grammatical error on this page at all. Let's click on OK to get rid of that. Now let me jump to a page where I know I do have some errors. I'm going to go into my courses section group And on the OneNote page, let's run our spell check again. Now this time you can see that I have the spelling pane opened on the right-hand side. And it's picked up the word PowerPoint. And that's because I've used a lowercase p within this word, and it should really look like this. And you can see that I've got some suggestions underneath, which I can choose from. So I'm going to say I meant PowerPoint with a capital, just to replace that word. It's then picked up the word won't, so you can see that I've missed out an apostrophe. Now, as I'm going through, you can also see that the word that I'm currently spell checking is highlighted in the notebook. And this is a good opportunity for you to see the different visual indicators applied to different errors. So because this is a grammar error as opposed to a spelling error, the word has a blue double underline, whereas spelling errors have that red squiggly underline. So once again, the suggestion I have here is correct. I'm going to select it to replace. It moves on to the next one, and I can see here that this is actually a spelling error. So this should say, I can't wait to dive into it. So once again, the suggestion here is correct. I'm going to select to change it to wait. And then I have another grammatical error. Once again, I've missed out an apostrophe. So I'm going to accept this suggestion. And now my spelling check is complete. Now it's worth noting with this spell check that you can only check one page at a time. There isn't any feature that allows you to define the scope of what you're checking. So I can't say to OneNote, check the entire notebook, which would include all sections and all pages. I just have to check each page separately. So how you want to manage that, whether you want to do it as you go or do it right at the end, is entirely up to you. Now let's do one final spell check. I'm clicked on the Schedule tab in the Course Plan group, and I can already see here I have the word SharePoint repeated throughout this little table, which is a red squiggly underline. So it's telling me that it's a spelling error. So I can jump back up to spelling. I can see that once again it's because I haven't capitalized that P. So I'm going to select the suggestion and replace that for each of these by simply clicking. Again, there's no way to replace them all in one go, unfortunately. So that's it for this module and also for this section. We're going to be moving across into section 5 now, where I'm going to show you some more tools available to organize your content. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you will join me. Hi guys, and welcome back to the course. So now let's take a look at some of the things that we've learned in this section in the Windows 10 version of OneNote. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I am working in Project Sierra. I'm on the to-do list section, and I'm currently clicked on the Monday page. And currently I have a single note in there that says, remember to call the bank. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press enter, and I'm just going to add a bit of a title, and I'm going to call this Important Things. And what I want to do here is apply some formatting to this title. And you'll see as I highlight important things, I get that little mini toolbar pop-up that's going to give me some of those formatting options that I might find useful. And if I click on the 3 dots, it's going to give me access to a lot more options as well. Now it just so happens that the option that I want to use isn't on this mini toolbar, so I'm just going to select important things and go up to the Home tab. Because what I want to do here is I want to apply one of those heading styles to really make this title stand out from the points below. So I'm going to go all the way across this ribbon to where we have heading 1, click the drop down, and I'm going to give this a heading 2 heading. So once again, when it comes to applying styles, it works in exactly the same way as OneNote for desktop. Now what I want to do is I want to add some tags. And again, we're working on our home ribbon. And if we go over to this little checkbox item and click the drop down, this is where we can find all of our tags. Now the list in OneNote for Windows is not as comprehensive as what you'll find in that desktop app. If you remember, we have a very long list of tags to choose from, but we have a few really important ones. So the to-do list checkbox, the important tag, questions, remember for later, and also definition. And of course, if you want to, you can jump into here and create your own custom tag. So maybe I want to be able to tag contacts. So I'm going to call this one contacts. I'm going to select an icon. Now for this, I'm going to jump to all icons and let's see what we've got in here. I'm going to select this one, click on create. It's telling me my tag was created successfully. So now if I click that drop down, I should be able to find my newly created tag in here. And of course, right at the bottom, I have the option to delete my custom tags, which at the moment is only this contacts one. Now I don't want to delete it, so let's just go back because the one that I want to choose is the to-do tag. And that's going to give me that all-important checkbox. And then when I hit enter, I can carry on going through and typing in my checklist items. Now, if I wanted to create another list down here, I'm going to say medium priority. It might be that I want this to take on the same formatting as the important things heading. So what I could do is I could jump up to the Home tab and just apply heading 2, but I could utilize my Format Painter. So I'm going to select Important Things because that contains the formatting I want to use. And then on that Home tab in the middle, I have a Format Painter icon. So let's click it once to activate. And then all I need to do is paint over my text to apply the same formatting. Hit enter and I can now enter my medium priority to-do items, like so. And once again, I could tag these if I wanted to. I'm going to select both items, jump up to my tags, and this time I'm going to say that these are important. Now, one other thing we took a look at in this section was utilizing spell check. Now, with OneNote for Windows 10, if you go through all of these ribbon tabs, then you won't find an option on here for checking spelling. And that's because OneNote is set up to check your spelling as you type. So for example, if I was to go into here and make a blatant spelling mistake, so let's say I say like that, once I click away, then OneNote is going to highlight that to me by a red squiggly line, letting me know that I have a spelling error just there. So what I can do is right click, go to proofing, and it's going to give me some suggestions. I can also choose to ignore or add to the dictionary from here. So I'm going to choose the correct spelling, which is priority, and it fixes that spelling error for me. The same thing is going to apply with grammar. Now, if you want to check what you have set up for your spelling settings, if you go up to the 3 dots in the top corner and then choose Settings and go to Options, if you scroll down, you'll see that underneath Proofing, you want to make sure that you have Hide Spelling Errors toggled off. This means that OneNote is going to check as you type. So if you know that you have a spelling error, but OneNote isn't recognizing it, it's probably because you've got this setting toggled on. So don't forget to check that. So that is it for this section. I will see you in the next one.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To get 4 free courses in Excel, QuickBooks, Microsoft Project, and Photoshop, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.